Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another movie episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's trying to go get some power converters with me tonight?
The podcast guest you're looking for, Carrie Chandler.
And Peter Bingham-Pankratz standing by.
And we are here. This is also a Patreon episode brought to you by Patreon. You guys voted for this. You can go sign up on our Patreon for the little as $1 and vote in our monthly poll. And this poll was to decide what Star Wars movie we should cover. And I had Solo on there just because I like Solo, but of course nobody voted for Solo, which I'm not surprised in the least bit.
Solo's a fun movie. I like Solo.
I like Solo more than I should. Way more than I should.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So we are here to talk about my favorite Star Wars movie, A New Hope. Came out in 1977. My God.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Were any of us born?
No.
Nope. All right. I'm usually the oldest person on these podcasts, but I wasn't sure.
34. So
I'm 39.
I don't think I even saw this in theaters. I don't think so. Even when it came out, I don't think I went and saw this one. I know I saw Return of the Jedi.
You didn't see the special edition?
I don't remember.
That was, my dad, who I didn't go to the movies with a lot, but he would take me to movies occasionally. He and I went and saw each of the special editions in the theater, and I bet that was the first time he ever saw Star Wars, and the only time he ever saw it. But he did it for me. But no, I was born the year that I was born a month after Empire hit theaters. So
okay.
And this was directed by George Lucas, written by George Lucas back when he actually knew how to make good movies. A long time ago. So
long time.
I don't think we need to say any more about I think people know what this is. So
yeah, are we gonna talk about like the origins of how he came to write this movie?
Sure. I don't know him very well, but sure.
I mean, I could talk about it a little bit. I'm just kind of talking out of my butt, not looking up things. But he wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, and so I don't know if you guys grew up watching Flash Gordon or not. They would play it on TBS on like Sunday afternoons sometimes when I was a kid. But he wanted to make he really liked the Flash Gordon, like I guess the radio serials, and he wanted to make. And then there were the Flash Gordon movies, and he wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, and he wrote a spec script, which is just like a treatment. So just like a 3 or 5 page like outline basically of a Flash Gordon movie that was like a riff on the Japanese movie Hidden Fortress. And whoever owned Flash Gordon at the time was like, no, we're not letting you near our Flash Gordon. That's too precious for this young, indie filmmaker. I'm glad that they turned him down. Turned him down. Yeah, imagine the timeline where he had just made a Flash Gordon movie.
And that would have probably been it. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten... he probably would have gotten some other stuff, little things, but he would not have become the juggernaut that he became. And then,
there was still room for originality back in the late 70s, so
yeah,
you could still have a hit with things.
Exactly. I just wonder, would it have been good? Because I don't know if you guys have seen Flash Gordon, but those movies are garbage.
I think I've seen some of the old black and white serials.
They're very that's what he was going for, but
they're what are they? Almost 100 years old at this point.
Jesus,
similar.
I know. I've only seen the movies that were made in the 70s, and I think is it Queen that does the soundtrack? It's not Queen. It's somebody else.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Queen. I think they made it in 1980. They said in response to Star Wars, they said this movie's a big hit.
Okay. I bet that's
so they made a movie.
I've seen, actually.
Yeah, and I think that was a failure.
Oh yeah. I mean,
it had to be because I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
I just remember him throwing a silver football at somebody,
that's
football at someone.
That's the 1981. It's one of those glut of movies that came out, and they said this movie's a big hit. Let's make everything like Star Wars.
Ice Pirates.
How'd that work out? I mean, this movie is special in all shape and forms. I mean, so we should also talk about what version we watched because there are 2 versions of this movie. One that only exists in very limited quantities now.
There's probably several versions now at this point. I'll just say what I watched. I watched the Blu-ray edition, so I have the physical copy, which is basically the special edition with each version. So they had the special edition, and then they had the DVD version, and they had the Blu-ray version, and then the Disney Plus version. Each time there's 1 or 2 things that got tweaked in later editions. So whatever one you watch, there's things that will tell you which version there's a clue that will tell you which version you're watching. But I watched the Blu-ray. So
Okay.
Yeah, I have the so I went back and bought the DVDs that are in like the bronze and black case.
Right.
They have I think they're the special editions, but then they have a second disc for each movie that is the original theatrical cut.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why I went back and bought those at not a small expense. I think it was like $45 for each one, but I just wanted to have, because all I have the original Fox VHS for A New Hope and for Empire and Return, and then I have, of course, the ones that I think a lot of us grew up with in the 90s, the VHSs with the faces on them.
Yeah,
start off with those like really cool interviews with him and Lucas and Leonard Maltin. Those are the ones I grew up watching over and over again. For this, I was lazy. I just watched it on Disney Plus.
Same. Well, I don't own anything. Disney Plus is the safest way to watch it. So I'm like, I'm just watching Disney Plus. Wait, I do own this on DVD. I don't know, probably special editions though.
Here's the thing, like, if you watch it, I'm assuming on Disney Plus looks the same, but on the Blu-ray, it's the best quality you'll ever see. Like, Star Wars looks the best. And, I'm sure streaming it probably looks almost as good as a Blu-ray, but I was remarking, it's like, I've never seen it in such detail. Like, I've never seen, like, all the dust and everything.
Yeah, the Disney Plus version is I'm pretty sure it's the Blu-ray transfer. I mean, it looks very, very good. Yeah,
it looks fine.
Looks very high quality. It's not 4K, but it's still definitely HD. It does look very good. I just wish they offered the options to see different versions.
Right.
I don't know why the theatrical version is so hidden at this point.
Well,
I don't get it.
Under Lucas, it made sense because he didn't want people to see it.
I think they asked. So the last I heard of it was, I think it was Bob Iger or someone. Or maybe it was J.J. Abrams. Somebody got asked when the Disney movies were coming out, and they said, that's George Lucas's baby. We don't want to touch it because he did everything with that, and we don't want to ruin his vision. And then they said something about how it was hard to come by the original transfer, which I assume is just BS at this point.
So there is like kind of a thought of like to get Disney doesn't ever want to put something out that's not the very highest quality version.
Right.
And, there probably is some money and time expense into taking those old versions and making them look good enough for Disney standards,
Mm-hmm.
Because the theatrical cuts on that DVD, I mean, they look like the theatrical cut. They're not in HD or anything.
Right.
So it's like, I think Disney, if they were to put out the theatrical cut, they would want to do like a 4K transfer, 4K upgrade to it. That is probably just not worth the money to them because it's only a small contingent of nerds on the internet who care, right? And they just have to wait. They just have to wait for us to die off, and then everyone will think that Star Wars has had all this CGI bullcrap in it.
Yeah, I like the special edition. I have no problem with it in New Hope at all.
I have many problems with it.
We're gonna get to that, Mike. When we're gonna test your metal with that one.
I mean, again, like when I was watching this last night with my wife, I was starting to explain to her what was different and what wasn't, and it wasn't too long before she passed out on me. I'm like, okay, I see.
That's That's what Disney is counting on. Disney is counting on your wife to be the normal reaction, like boring robots and animals, blah blah blah. I
think Disney is counting on the next gen. My son, who says his favorite Star Wars movie is Rise of Skywalker, and it's just like. Yeah, eventually that'll just be, these will be the old ones.
What, Mike, is that your third favorite Star Wars? Is that?
Oh, God, when I saw it in theaters, I cried. I loved it. I have not seen it since, and I'm scared to go back to it.
I was
completely terrified.
That was the last movie I saw in the theater before COVID. And that was the first one that I saw in a theater that I didn't like when I saw it. Because much as I hate the prequels, I'll admit that I liked them when I saw them in the theater. But Rise of Skywalker, that was the one where I was like, I came out of the theater going, I'm one of the few. I'm glad
I'm also terrified that when I go back to it, because my plan is starting with this one, and we're going to cover all 9 of them and the other 2 movies, and that will be the very last one we cover. So I'm scared that my opinion will not be the same. I'm positive. So
yeah, of the non-original trilogy, the only one that for me like holds up on rewatch is Rogue One. All the others, I'm like, yeah, it's, you know, like I like Solo, I like Force Awakens, but I'm still like,
I don't like Rogue One.
I see the cracks. I do not see the cracks in the original trilogy, though. I don't see the cracks in A New Hope. I love this movie so much.
It's also, this is completely a standalone movie, really. Like, I mean, that's how it feels.
Right.
Like it
Totally,
you can tell it was not meant
one movie
to be a part of a series like what it becomes. It was meant to be, I'm going to make a movie. It's going to have an enemy. It's going to have, you know, a history of what happened before it that we're going to talk about, but not really talk about. And then we're going to have a story wrap up with a villain getting defeated.
Yeah, and he really tried to build up this like mythology that he had planned out this whole thing around it, but that is complete crap. Like this was absolutely a one and done idea, and he just left it open to the possibility of a sequel. But him putting episode 4 at the beginning, that was just, again, that was a callback to those Flash Gordon serials. It was just like, you know, make it look like it's in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
And that episode only came after, you know, Empire Strikes Back.
That that's true. The original theatrical cut didn't have that. So
yeah. So it was only put in there after the sequels because he was thinking, at least according to him, he was thinking about doing more movies like 1, 2, 3.
How'd that work out?
Well, it's interesting. You know, there are like internet, like there's a primitive internet message boards from like the 80s and stuff, like the late 80s and mid 80s, and you can go back and find them archives. You can find like nerds at the time talking about, oh, what will the prequels be? Because it was a thing that he knew that would happen. And it's like the earliest speculation, like, you know, 10, 12 years before they were even the prequel movies. You could hear what they have to say. And sometimes it's very interesting. If I can find the link, I can send some stuff to you. But it is very interesting to read that stuff.
It is. And even in the 90s, like I remember being like a teenager in the kind of mid 90s, and I didn't subscribe, but I would occasionally get my mom to let me buy, when I was like 12, 10, whatever, to buy like a copy of Star Wars Insider when I'd see it at the newsstand.
Right.
And I can remember it was like maybe 95 or 96 when he started filming Phantom Menace. And so I have still a copy of Star Wars Insider where it has just some behind the scenes photos of him and the crew scouting getting locations ready in Tunisia and so we're like, so we knew it was going to come back to Tatooine, and we're like, oh, what could this be about? Like, we know it's a prequel, so what are we going to see on Tatooine? Like, and then I know that a lot of the speculation was, oh, this will have to be about the Clone Wars, right? Because you know, Obi-Wan talks about serving with Anakin in the Clone Wars.
And I remember when I was watching this movie, you know, it's whenever I watch it, I always watch it in the view of when I was, you know, 10 and wondering like, oh, they're going to address that. Like I'd see Obi-Wan talking and be like, oh, they're going to address that in the prequels, or, you know, oh, that scene will come up in the prequels, or that will. And, you know, there's so many points in the movie where I can remember, you know, speculating so much about what would eventually be told. And it was always very different than what we saw on screen. But yeah, it was a fun time.
You know, and this is also like, because I mean, like for me, like my biggest introduction to Star Wars in this movie, I mean, yes, I think I did see it on TV randomly at time, but it wasn't really till the special edition where I'd seen it more. Like special edition, what I really remember is Star Wars. I don't really remember the theatrical cut. I mean, I'm sure they were on TV and stuff, but they're not the ones that, when I think of New Hope, I think of all the extra scenes that make you guys upset, that make me happy.
that is funny. Yeah. I never would have thought about that.
Yeah, I never would have thought about that either. Yeah, but I remember watching them on. My father had the laser discs, so that's how we'd watch it. And so when
go ahead.
When the special edition came out, I wasn't upset about that stuff. It was only later, as I got more an adult, when they said, "No, this is the version that will always be shown." Only later that I say, "Oh, I want the experience of my young childhood to have. I want to see those movies again. I don't want to see Jabba the Hutt and Boba Fett in there."
Hey, yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm 100% fine with the special editions being there. I just want access to the original versions also.
Right.
It should be. I mean, especially because the fact that like it can't be. I really don't believe it's that hard at this point to put them some shape or form, throw them as a bonus thing on a DVD or a Blu-ray, or a Blu-ray at this point. It's not hard. I mean,
well, like we were saying, they did that with the DVDs that I have, and actually, what I was going to say is the Laserdisc you were talking about. That's the version that is on that bonus disc on the DVDs I have. It's the Laserdisc transfer. So
and there's no way that doesn't exist anymore. This is not like, it's not like video games. Video games were thrown away when they were done because they weren't, especially early video games. But like stuff like this, like they've proven it's on other things. It exists. It's just Lucas is an idiot and doesn't want to bring. He doesn't want him to bring back the old stuff for some reason.
Well, I think especially if you look a lot at like his original script and his original storyboards and stuff, I think one of the most important secrets to Lucas's success is having his then wife, now ex-wife, there to edit him, and also not having a budget, because there's so many things he wanted to do that would have been just outright stupid. Like Han Solo was supposed to be a fish person, first of all. Han Solo was supposed to be a fish person, and then was it Obi-Wan that was supposed to have a droid head?
That sounds right. He wanted it to be more fantastical, yeah.
He did, and maybe that would have worked, but like he was held back from doing certain stuff, and then when he had more money than God, he can come back and do whatever he wants to do. And I think most of the changes he made were bad. Like some of them are fine. Like we could talk about a few of those. I know because we were talking about it when we were all watching. Like the dewbacks, adding the dewbacks when the stormtroopers are searching in the dunes and they find it's like, look, sir, droids, they find that random part that fell off of, R2 or C3PO.
I love that guy. I love when he pops up and go, look, and he has a little circle piece. I laugh every time I see that part because it's just so stupid.
It's like,
hilarious.
This random part of just falling off. But I always say it's fine, but like adding the dewbacks to that part, it's fine. It's cool. It's whatever. But then when you're in Mos Eisley and there's so much CGI crap on the screen that they're like blocking our view of the scene, and you've got like the little like vignette of the droid carrying the like metal log, and the other like little hover droid knocks it out of his hand and he bonks him, and just all that kind of stuff, it detracts from the movie. And like that establishing shot of Mos Eisley from 77 is amazing. It's like such a cool scene because it looks like it's actually, because it is real.
Oh, by the way,
this entire town in the desert, and then the CG version, you just cover up half of that stuff with random things walking in front of the camera, and that was just a mistake.
That droid with the log was a playset, by the way, that I have.
Sure.
Well, and there you
I have that droid
right on the damn head, right there.
I know, toys. I mean, that's what it was to me. I mean, I don't remember how old I was, but I know I had a bunch of Star Wars toys from this set. This is the sets that came out from around this time. I just regret not being intelligent enough to buy certain toys. Like I wish I had a Mara Jade figure and I had it in a box because I just like her, but I don't.
Yeah. So I worked at Target when Phantom Menace came out. That was my first job. I was a teenager working at Target the year that Phantom Menace came out. And so I used that Target discount and I bought like probably 50 Star Wars figures while I worked there. And they're mostly from this. They're mostly not from Phantom Menace. They're mostly I think they're called greenbacks. That's a black board with like a green like swoosh across it. And they're mostly from, I think, the special editions. It's like from that run. They're not necessarily from the movie, but I mean, yeah. So that's what most of mine are. I gave them to my son. He had no interest in them, and so I ended up just selling most of them. I just have a few still around.
Oh, okay.
I kept them in box forever, kept them like mint on card forever. And then I started looking up the value and I was like, oh, this Darth Maul I have is worth $12. This Darth Vader I have is worth $18. I'll just give him he'll enjoy it. So I let him open all of them and he played with them like for, I don't know, 10 minutes on Christmas morning and then never again. So, just not his thing.
Oh, I mean, each their own. I had a buddy of mine who had the entire the greenbacks, Force something it was called. He had the entire set in box in his closet at one time. This is back then. I don't know whatever happened to them, if he sold them, if he kept them, if he opened them, he threw them away, but he had the entire set.
Sadly, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it was the Power of the Force. Maybe that was.
Yeah, Power of the Force.
Power of the Force, yeah. They're like 90, it's like 97 to 99, something like that.
But that's really that's what the special edition did for these movies too, is that they really brought the vibe back and the excitement for these movies. Like, I mean, for so many people, that's their first take of seeing the special editions. Like you guys are saying, like when the old people die off, they won't, after they won't release, nobody will care.
Right.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, Star Wars toys, like, unless you found them at like a flea market or something, they weren't in stores
Not
for
anymore,
most of my childhood. There was, you know, my son like has so much Star Wars Legos. Like I've got behind me on the shelf behind me, I've got the Star Wars, the smaller version of the Millennium Falcon, not the like $500 one, but still like the $150 Millennium Falcon and all that. Like, and I was like, I told him, I was like, there was no Star Wars Legos when I was a kid. I mean, there was no branded Legos at all when I was a kid. There was like, you know, desert temple playset that looked a lot like Indiana Jones, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like, I remember I had a Luke Skywalker that I got at a garage sale that was missing his right foot, and it was from the Kenner, like the line from the early 80s or late 70s. It was the Return of the Jedi one. so early 80s. But
I have two classic figures from that line. I have a Royal Guard because they're my favorites, and I have a Snowtrooper somewhere.
Those are my two favorite Stormtroopers too. So Snowtroopers look so cool.
Just the way that this movie opens up too, I want to talk about. Like the word that's not important, but like the way that you're thrown into this world in chaos where you have a ship being attacked by a bigger ship. You don't really know what the hell is going on. It's such a good way to start a movie.
It's such a beautiful establishing shot that, like, you know, scrolling over the planet and the ship, you know, the Star Destroyer chasing the blockade runner. It's very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and audiences, it helps to view this from the lens of somebody at the time, and audiences were blown away by that. Seen on the big screen with no idea what to expect, you're like, oh my God, this is a huge ship.
There had never been anything like that. Like nothing came close to that.
Yeah.
I mean, they invented Photoshop for this movie. I believe it was this one. It was they had to what became Photoshop was invented by the special effects team because they didn't have the tools to do what they wanted to do.
I also got to say that because I watched way too much Star Trek recently, I was like, can they start shooting the ships? I'm like, wait, what about the shields? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, wrong franchise.
Yeah.
Because they just shoot the ships, it doesn't blow them up or anything, it just damages them. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, only shields in the extended universe.
Shields make more sense though.
If you read the books, they had they had ray shielding and they had shielding for like asteroids and stuff. But that's based on the books, which is, you know,
not canon anymore.
Heresy.
Yeah,
that's what I can think of.
I prefer heresy to non-canon.
I mean, there's just some. I just love the way everything opens up. I love how it drops you into this, and you know, Vader is a character who doesn't really come off like you're given like, oh, this is this terrible person, and he's, you know, powerful, but he doesn't really do a whole lot in the beginning. But just
he's so big. He's so big.
He's big. He's imposing. He's definitely the villain that people responded to, and that you know is the villain. But he's not as much of a badass as you'd think. He's kind of just a weird guy that's there in this movie. And, you know, all the Imperials think he's just the weird guy. And
I love that.
No one quite knows what to make of them. And they're kind of annoyed by him more than anything, especially Tarkin. They're all like, ugh, this guy's back.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the movie was presented, because it didn't have any of the backstory of him. It didn't really have a lot of his powers. He was just this old guy who followed this religion. You know, nobody quite knew what his deal was. But you could tell he was very powerful, I guess.
So I have a thought about this, and I might be getting a little too weeb on it, but
that's fine.
There's this whole thing, you know, in Japan, the Meiji Restoration that happened in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, where Japan was leaving the samurai behind and becoming this imperial power that would eventually be, you know, the imperial Japan that we fight in World War II. And you've got all these like crusty diplomats, or not diplomats, but these like bureaucrats now running the country, but you still have these like elderly or old samurai who are still trying to stick to their traditional ways. And I mean, the Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai, I'm gonna say as a history teacher, is actually pretty damn accurate. And that movie gets a lot of unfair criticism for, I don't know, because it's funny to say, oh, The Last Samurai starring Tom Cruise. I think I've ranted on this podcast before. He's not The Last Samurai. Ken Watanabe is The Last Samurai. But
I also like that movie too a lot.
I love that movie. That movie is amazing. But that movie is, to some extent, accurately depicting that, you know, clash between new imperial Japan and old samurai Japan. And Vader, his armor is based off of samurai armor, and he carries a sword, and he's amongst all these like bureaucrats who are the new thing. And his old way is no longer his old way is no longer the way, but he's holding on to it. And they don't respect him for it, but they are a little fearful of him because he represents this like dangerous past. And I don't know if Lucas was really working on that wavelength or not, but I feel like he might have been to some extent working on that, because that really, I think Peter, you're saying this is your favorite scene in the movie, is the boardroom scene.
Right. It's my favorite non-battle scene, I would say.
Yeah.
I
agree.
Scene.
It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite.
Well, it really shows you, I mean, this is when you start to kind of see what Vader can do, because you see him choke out a guy. And I do like seeing how Vader is really not in charge. I mean, he is, but he he's more of just that guardian or that guy, or the dog you let off the leash type of thing. He's not a member of the military like these guys are.
Yeah,
it's clear that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah, he doesn't have a rank or anything. You can tell he wouldn't be on a chart of the hierarchy. Like, he may not even be listed, but like when you're coming to town, the Emperor is taking an interest in what you're doing. So it's not like he's officially announced, but like he's like, oh shit, he's coming.
It's clear that he has been told to to follow Tarkin.
Right.
Like, that's clear from that scene, because Tarkin, all he has to do is say, Lord Vader, and that's it. He lets go of the gun. So it's like, it's clear that he's like, I am above all of you. I'm not afraid of any of you. I'm going to do what Tarkin says because I'm choosing to follow what Tarkin says. Because presumably the Emperor has told him to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that. I like the when Tarkin comes in and they're talking about like, oh, the Senate won't stand for this or whatever. It's like, well, the Senate's just been dissolved. There's no more government.
I really like that too.
Yeah,
because
I was just saying I love Rogue One, and Rogue One that happens in Rogue One is they talk about the Senate has just been dissolved. Because
you have political, but you don't have political overruling the entire story and making it annoying and not fun for people. I mean, you have the politicalness, so it shows you that this is a government. It shows you this is a more civilization, but it doesn't get into like how other movies get into it, like Phantom Menace. It's there, but it isn't too much, and that's great.
And I do think that's something Lucas did a good job of. Is he based the Empire off of the Nazis, right? The Nazis, they refer to the members of the SS as stormtroopers, and so we have the stormtroopers, and the uniforms are similar, and then the way Hitler took power with first becoming chancellor and then dissolving the Senate and then becoming the sole authority. He's following those kind of. I think it's good. He borrows from history really well.
Yeah. There's also, I know Lucas said it was also a Nixonian thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was going on around the time. And how the Emperor was originally written, at least in the book, in the novelization, it opens up with kind of a Nixonian thing where the Emperor kind of Machiavellian takes control and then he becomes a puppet of his advisors and things like that. But that was definitely on his mind, too. But certainly the Nazis are the biggest influence. I mean, these are all, they commit genocides where they blow up a whole planet and they're just like, well, let's go on to the next thing. And it's
they're all
evil, but they're Nazi evil. They're like bureaucratic evil. They're like very methodical about it. I'm sure they well documented all the planets they blew up.
Well, and it's an interesting thing. Also, you think about it. I mean, the scale, right, of killing billions of people on Alderaan, right?
Yeah.
But you're in a galactic empire with presumably thousands of planets, so there are quintillions of people, and so it becomes a much smaller thing to like, oh yeah, well that's just one of 10,000 planets in the empire. So
yeah, I'm sure that's how they justified it. They're like,
yeah.
Well, also, I'm sure they, control the message, because one thing that Hitler, did that kind of the Empire does too, because that's what they're based on, is that you control what people hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like with Hitler, if I remember correctly, he bought all the radio stations and controlled the message that you heard. So all you heard was his truth.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Empire does too. You don't really see it in this movie too much, but in general, the Empire controls everything that people know.
Yeah, it's all propaganda at that point. Once you get
it's interesting to kind of go back to this movie also and thinking about the Empire. What is Luke's dream?
Join the Empire.
Yeah, he wants to be a TIE fighter pilot.
And you can tell, and he knows about the rebellion because when C-3PO brings it up, and it's kind of like he's kind of like of the rebellion. So I feel like And it's hard to know what he thinks. Like, he wants to join the Empire, but at the same time, this rebellion intrigues him. I guess there is that deleted scene where he talks to Biggs, and Biggs is like, I'm going to join the rebellion. Yeah.
That was really good. I wish that was in the movie.
They should have left that in. Yeah, that's something I wish they had left in.
Because I was watching that for the first time because Peter had sent the link to it on YouTube, and I'm watching this. I'm like, this really should have been in the movie because Biggs is in one scene near the end. Wait, does Biggs die in this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but he's in one scene where it's like, he's a great pilot. It's so good to see you. And I'm just like, who the fuck is this guy?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
he mentioned him. He goes, Biggs and I was gonna, Biggs and I were gonna go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters.
Right. Yeah.
So he mentions them, but yeah, they should have left that scene in to give that context and to give Luke more.
It makes Luke a better character because Luke is a whiny brat in this movie, and he doesn't really have much. But that little scene with him going to a bar, going to a place, other people, and you just have this very little scene. Really, I felt would have worked in this movie better to make the character more, and also kind of introduce the Empire a little bit more. Like, yes, they're recruiting people from all over the place, and that it introduces the Rebel Alliance in another way. Versus, I like the way it flowed better. I wish it would have been in this movie a lot, and I was surprised to think that. It
would have added some thoughtfulness to him joining the rebellion instead of just like, oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah. I was talking about going to become a Imperial, but now, I'll join the rebellion. Sure.
Which makes sense. I mean, they don't have a lot of options, especially on this desert planet. You don't have options. So it makes complete sense that he would join the Nazi equivalent because at least it gets him out of where he's at. You can always go wherever because...
Will it be a moisture farmer?
I mean, Tatooine is a backwater planet. Like, I mean, as we already seen, like, hell, I mean, there's not a lot there. Like, it's not a great place.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely get it, but I think maybe they took out that scene because they didn't want you to associate Luke. He wanted to join the Nazis. Also, he's a bad guy type of thing, maybe.
I would say it probably got cut for timing because it's like, where do you put it? Like, I think the movie as it stands works and it flows and it goes pretty quickly. And that, as good a scene it is, it does slow things down because where would you put it? Where'd you put it in the midst of,
that should be your first introduction to Luke. Instead of, Luke, come here.
I think that's a good introduction of Luke as it is. And I think it's just a problem of, it's a good scene, but it's hard as a filmmaker to know where to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. It would be, I'm not sure exactly where you would put it because you do kind of need that opening because you have to show him on the farm with his family for the death of the family to have any meaning.
Right. Yeah.
And hey, and the best part, he's playing with a T-Hopper toy. I laugh every time I see that part now too.
Yeah. T-64 Skyhopper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You fly.
I love that.
Is it? I think it's. Gosh, there was a LucasArts game.
Rebel Assault.
Was it Rebel Assault where that's like
you do fly a Skyhopper?
Mission, you fly a Skyhopper. Yeah.
It's not. CD. It was Sega CD, and I think for PC as well. Yeah.
You had it.
I remember specifically my friend who introduced me to Star Wars, my best friend, he had a Mac and he got this like LucasArts like value pack at Sam's. His mom came home with like, look, I got these. She was like into games and stuff too. And she came home, she's like, look, I got this like value pack at Sam's, and it had like Maniac Mansion, Full Throttle, Sam and Max, and then it had a Star Wars flight sim on it that started with you flying through Beggar's Canyon in a T-64 Skyhopper.
So what you're saying, it was a game his mom found, huh?
It was a game his mom found, yeah.
But
I'm sure
I just love the T-Hopper a lot. I love the idea of it, and I wish there would have been
my figure of Luke on my figure that I kept of Luke on my shelf over here has that as like the accessory because he has a Scott. It's from that scene.
Mike, you can see in the background. It's the matte painting in the background of Luke's hut or whatever.
I like. I also found it funny, like, but I guess this is canon now that when he goes and buys the droids, that red droid that blows up did it on purpose so R2 could continue his mission.
That is so stupid.
Agreed.
God.
Agreed. But I guess it's canon for some reason.
They just want to make everybody.
Yeah, this is like J.K. Rowling saying that wizards walk around shitting themselves. Like, there's no reason to say that. There's no reason. You're allowed to think that as the author. There's no reason to say that.
Yeah, they're trying to explain everything and absolutely everything. It's like, don't do that. Don't explain absolutely everything.
And I guess I didn't realize until this watch through, or I was more aware of it and thought it was so funny that the whole mission he goes on that ends up saving the world is all because she's pretty hologram. Whew, what a pretty girl. I better go find her. I'm like, yes, it makes complete sense. But
we have not seen a single female on this planet other than his aunt. So I could see it.
He's like, ooh, a woman.
This is the equivalent of like getting that JCPenney catalog and flipping to the bra section when you're back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Gotta take what you can get.
It was just funny. It was just funny to me that and the whole thing of how he puts together, Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hey, there's an old guy named Ben Kenobi. I'm like,
I mean, it does.
Wonder if he knows this Obi-Wan.
Only in retrospect do you wonder, like, okay, so why would they? This is the son of basically Hitler, and let's keep his name. His name is Luke Hitler, basically, and let's keep his name the same. And I'm a wanted Jedi, like they kill everybody else. So my name is Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I'll change it to Ben Kenobi. No one will find me.
And I'm gonna leave him with Hitler's stepsister and brother-in-law.
They'll never
exactly like. Presumably, he won't ever come back to this planet.
Well, he does hate sand.
That's true. He does hate sand.
That's as good an explanation of any of why he never goes back.
I know it's when you think about it. It's kind of stupid. Like, wouldn't you think? I mean, one, why would you keep the name? I mean, the name, sure, it could be like a common last name, but still, I'm pretty sure anybody with the last name of Hitler got rid of it shortly after that time.
Especially if you lived in Hitler's home. Like, if your name is Hitler and you live in where Hitler lived to live, and you wanted to say find Hitler's son, you might want to check his home first. But
it's a really dumb, and it's one of those things that it's not dumb if this is the only movie. It's dumb when you start spinning out an entire franchise out of it.
Yeah,
that's when you start seeing all these little holes. It's not a plot hole in this movie because we have no reason to think that Darth Vader is even related to Luke at this point, right?
Why would you ever think?
Probably.
Yeah, there's no reason to think that.
No, it was not. It was definitely not part of his original plan. I don't think.
Definitely not.
I don't think Darth Vader became Luke's father until some draft of the second movie or something.
Oh, like definitely not. I mean, I know Mark Hamill found out like when they got ready to film that scene.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, when they got ready to film that scene, he told him, "All right, here's what he's going to say," and he's like, "What?"
Right.
And it's fine. I mean, I think it's a great. I do think it's great that they're related. I think that father-son dynamic that you get in the third movie, especially, I think is great. I'm not against it, but if this is just a single movie, as far as we know, Darth Vader killed Luke's father. That's their connection. This is the guy that killed your dad. This is the guy that killed your dad, and now he's going to kill your surrogate grandfather.
It works enough. Like, and I also never realized until, because everyone knows like the meme and from Revenge of the Sith, "Hello there, General Kenobi." I had never realized that the very first line Obi-Wan ever says when you meet him is "Hello there." I'm just like, wow, you asshole.
You sent that to the chat, and I sent the GIF of Lucas saying it's like poetry. It rhymes.
Right. And there's nothing original. Like there is
nothing original. Everything's a reference. Everything's a reference.
Including blasters. So uncivilized. It's like,
yes.
I just couldn't get over that. Like because I mean, I always hear that joke, and I always thought, okay, they're referencing and I did not realize that's the first thing he says in this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also get a kick out again another meme where when he goes, "Do you know Ben Kenobi?" "Well, of course. Do you know Obi-Wan Kenobi?" "Of course I do. He's me." And I'm just like, it's such a stupid line because
I think it's great.
It's hilarious though.
Yeah. Obi-Wan is definitely, he may be, my favorite character in this movie.
Definitely.
Because Alec Guinness sells it. He doesn't phone it in. Like, he can tell, in later years, he got annoyed by having to do all this stuff. But in this movie, he does sell. He was nominated, in fact, for an Academy Award for this role.
Yeah, I mean, Alec Guinness is just an amazing actor if you ever see anything else he's in. And he's just...
Right.
Yeah, he, in retrospect, hated this movie.
He made a lot of money from it, I heard. He negotiated a percentage of the profits, and he
smart guy.
Made millions upon millions.
Because he's really the only person in this movie that was famous before this movie.
He's the only known actor.
He's the only known actor in this movie.
Because Mark Hamill might have had Corvette Summer, I think, before this, but anyone know what the hell I'm talking about?
He was on General Hospital, I think. He was on some soap opera.
Yes. I think they all... Well, the other one, Peter Cushing was a veteran actor. He was in a lot of horror movies. But he wasn't like a huge star.
He's a character actor. He was just like... He was in a lot of stuff, but he was not like a headliner.
Right.
I mean, Harrison Ford was a carpenter that sold weed, apparently. So.
Yeah, weed dealer.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. There was some meme or something came up on Facebook.
Oh,
one of those facts.
The woman from Mamas and the Papas. She said when she saw Star Wars, she was like, "Hey, that's my weed dealer."
Right. Yeah. He was in American Graffiti.
Right.
And he'd been in a couple movies. He was in a movie called The Conversation, which is really good, where he's one of the few movies where he plays a villain. But very, very small role. He would not have been known to the audiences, unless you had seen American Graffiti. Maybe you might know him, but otherwise he was not. And Carrie Fisher had famous, very young. She had very famous parents. I think Eddie Fisher was a famous singer, and Debbie Reynolds.
Debbie Reynolds was huge. Yeah,
was huge.
Okay.
So her parents were famous, but she herself was not well known.
I mean, and it is nice. Like you said earlier, he didn't have a budget, which I think is best when Lucas doesn't have money to make a movie.
Right.
Oh, he does.
You give him a budget
without a budget.
He goes a little crazy.
I mean, he had a little more of a budget with Empire, and Empire is my favorite movie. But I think this is, I think Empire is my favorite, but this is maybe the best overall. Empire just holds like a really special place for me. But
Empire
I feel
does
like a New Hope is my second favorite, and it's a close second.
Empire is great and maybe my favorite too, but it's hard to watch it without thinking I have to watch another one. Like it doesn't stand alone as much. Like you need number one and number 3.
Yeah, exactly.
So this one you just watch from start to finish. You're like, that's complete. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like we were talking about, like with all the, and again, I always laugh with Obi-Wan when he first gives him the lightsaber, and he's like, and all I can think of is like how he gets that lightsaber. No, I can't think of it any other way. I'm like, oh yeah, you killed children with that. That children really killed with that lightsaber. Like,
that scene might be my second favorite non-battle scene, because there's so much going on with the lightsaber in there, and you get talked about the Clone Wars, so you get more backstory. And I will say, the scene where he asks, "How did my father die?" and even though it's not intentional, you can see Alec Guinness kind of hesitate and like be like, "How did my father die?" And he kind of thinks about it, like, "Oh, I better think of a lie to say." Or maybe he's like, I knew this was coming. You better get my prepared lie going.
Yeah.
And it wasn't intentional, but only in retrospect do you think that actually works. Like the way that scene plays out, it works if you know that Darth Vader is Luke's father. So
yeah, if you know that, I mean, as far as Obi-Wan is concerned, he basically killed Anakin himself to an extent.
Right.
And dumbass didn't finish the job, but yes.
It's like, yeah, I'm not cruel. I'm just gonna let you like burn to a crisp to death.
Oh. There's a scene that I forgot about earlier that I wanted to mention, that this whole movie nothing would have happened when that escape pod goes out, when they capture the ship, and there's no life signs. You think someone maybe we should just blow it up anyway.
Yeah.
Droids exist in this world. Maybe
Family Guy did the perfect joke on that, where he's like, what are we gonna like run out of lasers?
Are they paying you by the laser or something?
Are they paying us by the laser?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And it is funny because they're not lasers, actually, blasters. Well, I'm getting into my extended universe.
Oh boy.
According to the books, it's firing a piece of metal that has been like superheated. So there is actually ammunition, which makes sense because those things move slightly faster than a professional tennis serve. It's the only reason anyone is able to like deflect them, because they're not moving at bullet speed.
Like a phaser, you can't deflect a phaser unless you have your arms tuned to the right frequency.
Yeah, but that's the point. Even with super Jedi speed, they wouldn't be able to actually stop even a bullet, much less a laser. So, but I don't know. I'm getting into some deep nerdery now.
But it's just one of those things where I kept thinking, like, why don't they just blow up the thing anyway?
Yeah,
just to be safe. And again, if they did that in all the movies, there'd be Empire wouldn't have lost, because he would have stopped this whole thing from happening.
Well, there is also the issue of, I don't know, to try maybe kind of find a way around this. Vader's mission there is to retrieve the stolen Death Star plans, and he needs to be sure that he's got them. And if they just blow up the escape pod, then he can't be sure. He can't be sure that the plans, because they know Princess Leia doesn't have them anymore. Because, presumably they search her. And so it's like, all right, well, they're somewhere. And if they had blown up the pod, then they don't know. But I don't know, because that isn't really the reason. And Vader wasn't there to tell them not to blow it up. So I don't think
they even know what they're doing, what their real plan is. They're just there.
Yeah.
I just found it funny that they don't.
Yeah,
do anything.
You're right. There's really no explanation.
You're right.
Oh, and I also want to talk about, like we were saying earlier, when you first get to Mos Eisley, I know that I personally really like all the special edition stuff that's added as you get them all. I think it adds character to the town. But again, that was, I think, that's the first viewing that I really remember of the special edition. I don't remember the theatrical cuts that I would have seen on TV. I have no recollection of those. I just always remember all the toys that I wanted when I see it. That's what I remember.
My version growing up was not technically the theatrical version. My version that I watched over and over again were the face VHSs, the VHSs that.
I had those too.
Yeah, those are the ones that I watched over and over and over again, and those are a remaster of the theatrical version. They don't make any changes except that they add episode 4 to the opening crawl.
Yeah,
and then they kind of upgraded the look of the Death Star blowing up at the end, and otherwise they're exactly the same. They've just been remastered to, I don't know, 240p, but they're those are the ones I grew up watching. And yeah, I feel like the original is better, but I can't put myself in the mindset of having always had the special edition and then going back. So I don't know. I guess I can see where if you had that originally, but it's just like, it's such a good scene and it looks so real. And then the CG stuff, if there had been a couple of things in the background, have been fine. Add some little hover droids floating around, add a dewback, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's so much stuff, and you add this little comedy vignette with the droid dropping the log and bonking the other droid on the head, and it's just like, no, this isn't necessary. Like, calm down a little bit.
Yeah, and there's just the humor is dialed up just a little bit too much when there's a speeder bike that almost hits the Ronto, which is the big beast, and the beast kind of go, and the Jawa's going, oh, teeny and stuff. It's like, okay, that's are we supposed to laugh at that? I guess, but it's just. Why are we focusing on this like local color? And then there's a scene where they're talking about the droids with the stormtroopers. There's a Ronto just kind of walks right in front of the screen.
Yeah, there's a Ronto that does. There's a like rust orange R5 unit that just like casually strolls in front of the camera and blocks your view right as Obi-Wan is saying one of his iconic lines.
Yeah, it's so annoying. It's just annoying, and it's more annoying than there's the CGI. The CGI being bad is not the worst part. The worst part is they're bombarding your senses with all
That's
this
what it is.
useless
It's too
stuff.
much. It's not that the CGI is, because I don't mind bad old CGI. Like I was recently rewatching The Matrix, and I think that's from a similar time frame, and it looks beautiful in spite of it being old. But
Blade 2 is another one.
But Matrix 3, the fight with all the Agent Smiths looks like garbage.
Right. Yeah.
And it's because it's too much. It's a bombardment on your senses.
Also, that movie is garbage, so that doesn't.
No, or actually, no, I meant the second movie. The third one is actually interesting, but anyway, I mean, also bad, different way. But getting off of the CGI stuff, that scene is, I think that might be my second favorite non-battle scene in the movie. Is that scene of them talking of we see a way the Force can be used that isn't choking people with your with telekinesis. Or impersonating the call of a crate dragon. We're seeing a different thing you can do with the Force. I think that was pretty cool. Like this subtle manipulation that he does. I just love it. Yeah.
I also like when the scene when he's telling them these aren't the droids you're looking for. You think somebody else would hear? Why is the guy just repeating what the old man is saying in the car? But,
well, I feel like it's kind of like there may be like more than one person affected by this.
I think everybody's affected by it. All the stormtroopers are. Luke is like, what's going on here?
What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, he's like blown away by it, because as far as Luke knows, I mean, he's probably never even heard of the Force other than like it's this religion that this ancient people used to follow or whatever.
Also, I feel like the religion isn't really even mentioned at all. I mean, it's mostly gotten rid of too.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that Vader chokes out refers to it as an old religion. Yeah,
because they got rid of all the Jedi stuff, and they got, like you look in the other, again, not in this movie, but this content in general, like they really, the Empire has hidden all that information from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could think.
Go ahead.
Go on. No, you go ahead, Kerry.
Well, I think one thing that, and there's so much you could do. I feel like with the sequels, I feel like there's very little you could do to actually fix them. I think that they're just kind of broken. I feel like the prequels are bad, but with some tweaking, they could be good. And I think one thing, I call it the Demolition Man problem. So y'all seen Demolition Man, right?
Yes. Been a long time.
And how crazy different society is. And then you find out it's been like 15 years.
Right. Yeah.
It's been like literally 15 years, and people are singing like commercial jingles like it's pop music, and are like, so they don't even have sex in a normal way anymore, and they don't use toilet. It's like, it's too much change in too little time. If Demolition Man was taking place 500 years in the future, it'd be a much better movie and it would make a whole lot more sense, right? And similarly, if the original Star Wars trilogy is taking place 50 or 60 years after the prequels, then it would be believable that no one would know anything about the Jedi.
Yeah, it's not long enough.
But it's been 20 years. It's been 18, maybe 20 years.
But that's also because they really wanted the son to be, Luke to be the son of Vader and all that, where instead of just going with different characters.
But that wasn't the... well, you mean the prequels. Yeah, I guess that's what you're saying is it's not till the prequels that we find out that it's only been 20 years, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, because they don't say how long the Clone Wars were in this at all.
Yeah.
It's never mentioned.
One of the mistakes of the prequels, I think, was making the Jedi like basically an arm of the government. Like, it's not like Yoda. Oh, yeah. Theoretically, these are pretty famous people, and like they have conferences with the Chancellor, who's the president. So like, if one of the president's advisors is one of the member of his ancient religion, it kind of takes the mystery out of it.
Right.
It should have been more of like a mystical thing. Yeah.
I mean, it would be like if like Catholicism was outlawed and all the Catholic churches were destroyed, and then 20 years later, people have never heard of the space pope. It's like it's like everyone would know who Yoda is. There would be like pictures of him on like T-shirts and stuff. Like people would have little Yoda statues and stuff, and it wouldn't be this like mystical, crazy thing. I mean, even in a super repressive government, they can't erase information that quickly.
Yeah.
And so that is one of the issues caused by that. But anyway, I think it's really neat seeing Obi-Wan use his powers, because that's another thing is we never see Obi-Wan use his powers violently in the entire movie, unless you count the duel with Vader. He's never violent. He's always like, he's uses his powers to scare off the Sand people by making them think that they hear a dragon. He uses his powers to manipulate the people here. We see him get violent with a lightsaber, but we never see him do anything violent with the Force. And I think that's important, because you look at Yoda in Empire, and that he's same thing. He's saying the Force is, for him, it's about peace. And that's another problem with the prequels, is having Yoda, jump around like a spider monkey and stuff, which is whatever. But if you actually notice, across all the movies, Jedi almost never use their powers offensively. They use their lightsabers offensively, but the Force itself is almost like it's sacred.
That's very true.
You'll occasionally, you'll see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, knock over some droids and stuff like that, but they're not like Force choking people. They're not. I mean, even in video games, right? Force choking is always like a dark side power.
Yeah.
Force lightning is always a dark side power, and the light side stuff is always very defensive and peaceful. And I don't know. I like that. I think it's a good way to introduce that dichotomy. You've got the bad Force user choking people with his mind. You have the good Force user making people hear a noise down the hallway. And
I agree.
I think that's really
good way to put it.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing that I know that was changed with the special edition that I know I don't notice, but I know a lot of people complain about. In the special edition, in the original version, Han shoots first, right? When he has the confrontation with Greedo.
Yes.
Yeah. He shoots, period. There's no one else who shoots.
Yeah. Greedo
okay. So
because without that, and I watched it last night, I had in my head that you clearly see Greedo shoot first. They shoot simultaneously, and Greedo just misses. And so Han Solo goes from being a badass to just being lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, there's many things wrong with that.
The other thing I want to talk about, like a scene that I still love every time I see it, when they first go into the bar and you have Luke where the guy's like, he doesn't like you. Well, that's okay. I don't like you either. I love this scene.
I love that guy. That is I love Rogue One. I think it's it's my fourth favorite Star Wars movie, and it's a close fourth. But putting that guy in Rogue One was probably the thing I hated the most about Rogue One. It's my biggest complaint. It's like, no, we don't need that. He was a random guy. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time and acted like a jerk, and he got, in trouble for it.
But he's wanted in 12 systems with a death penalty.
Right.
And I have the death sentence in 12 systems.
And I love how they just cut off his arm, like, because it gives you your first.
Cut off, they don't know
not his arm, but the other guy.
Ponda Baba. Yeah, they cut off Ponda Baba's arm. Does he kill the 12? You know,
I'm not sure.
I don't think
he does, right?
I don't
He
think
hits him.
anyone.
He does hit him.
Oh, does he? So
I don't think there's any source that says he died. I think it's more than like Ponda Baba gets the worst of it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely what you see. I think you do see him slash a lightsaber across. Yeah. So he presumably is dead.
Yeah,
and then Ponda Baba just loses an arm, but we don't know. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Obi-Wan would avoid killing him if he could.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but getting your arm, and I like how he cuts off his arm and everything goes back. The band stops playing for a second. Well, okay, to go back to normal.
That's a great scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's very Western.
Well, look. Yeah.
I mean, this whole scene in the cantina is it's very much a like Clint Eastwood 70s Western. The guys walk in the bar, music, there's somebody in the, instead of somebody playing the piano in that little jaunty tune, it's Figure and Dan and his band playing jizz. George Lucas decided that's what that should be called.
Yeah.
And,
yes. Which I always find so funny.
And then they stop whenever things get violent, and then start. That is exactly what happens in those westerns. That is like a trope. It's so good. And I will say, this is one thing that surprises me is in the special edition, they don't throw in a bunch of CGI bullshit in this scene.
And I love the cast of just random people in the bar.
Right, exactly. And it seems like Lucas, with his bad instincts, would have completely replaced all that stuff with a bunch of terrible CG, and he didn't. They kept it almost exactly the same.
Yeah, they took out the werewolf man, I believe. I think that's the only thing maybe they did.
Yeah.
Why?
Probably because Lucas didn't like it or something. He probably thought it was too from the creature shop or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but the devil man also does look a little bit like Universal Monster-ish.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. But it's mostly intact, and I think because that scene was that was one scene that back in the 70s everybody was wowed by it. I'm sure he wanted to
Star Trek at the time.
Right.
And it's like, oh, these aliens have arched eyebrows and pointy ears. And these aliens, I mean, like even Klingons just looked like vaguely Middle Eastern.
Right. Yeah. It was a change. These were actual aliens that looked, they looked alien.
There's an Ithorian in the background at one point, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah, like that. That's crazy. I mean, that's like a complicated looking puppet.
The Ithorian Mike was he has looks like a flat head. Do you remember Boba Fett, the mayor in Boba Fett?
Yes, the guy that,
the mayor in Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, exactly. Right. There's one of those in the background, the Ithorians, and I always thought they were like they're so alien. Like that is an alien race where you have to have a puppet because there's no way to put a human being in that costume.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it great.
That's what makes it great. It's really good.
And the fact that it was low budget and they could still make all the stuff look great and that people were wowed by it is a testament to the filmmaking, the makeup and costume people who made this.
Yeah.
So effective.
I also want to point out we are something I think is never brought attention to. Obi-Wan speaks can speak with a Wookiee.
Yeah.
Because Obi-Wan's over there having a conversation with Chewbacca.
Oh, yeah, good point.
In the background.
I didn't think about that.
We can't hear what they're saying, but so that means he understands. I mean, he has to understand because he tells Luke that I found us a ship.
Yeah.
So
it says Chewbacca.
I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He calls him Chewbacca. Yeah. Just like Leia and a couple of other people are constantly calling Han Solo Han.
Yeah, exactly.
They also don't say Leia, they say Leia in this movie.
That's true, they do. They hadn't worked out the pronunciations yet. Well, different accents, different people would probably in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
only the Empire is like all British.
Right, exactly.
At least they weren't all German. That would have been more than nose what they were going for.
A little too more than nose.
Admiral Mahdi. I think Admiral Mahdi might be the only American because he has an American accent. So everyone else in Elvis is British, but only Mahdi is. Yeah,
and he's the one who gets punked. So
exactly.
The next scene I want to talk about is the scene that I like actually.
Sure.
It's a deleted scene, but I don't know all the details. But I remember when the special editions were first coming out, and they had the scene where Jabba the Hutt is here. Han Solo's got the job, and he's like, "I'm going to pay you back." And then they literally had to make him walk in the tail for some stupid reason. The guy goes, "Bleh!" And I remember showing the scene. I remember there being Taco Bell toys of this scene of something to do with it. And I remember being so excited. And then I get to see my favorite, favorite character of the entire Star Wars until Book of Boba Fett became a thing, Boba Fett. And I'm just like, oh man, he's in my movie. And yeah, like, I mean, even though I know it's a dumb scene, it's completely unnecessary. I would have rather had the scene where Luke is talking to his friends, to be honest with you, about joining the Academy. But this, I like it because I like Jabba the Hutt and I like Boba Fett. So, but why is Boba Fett there? Who the fuck knows? Should he be there? Absolutely not. But whatever.
I mean, it's fine because when we do eventually meet Boba Fett, all we know is that he's a bounty hunter who works for Jabba the Hutt. I'm fine with Boba Fett being there. Honestly, this scene, believe it or not, doesn't bother me. I just don't think it's necessary.
It's not.
It's not necessary. I did.
Toys.
Yeah. And the background is they did film this scene originally when they made the original movie. But at that point, Jabba the Hutt was just a dude. Because the word the Hutt didn't mean some alien race. It meant crime boss.
And there's a point
Jabba
when
the Dawn.
This is what it was. Because I was trying to think of what scene or what movie this was. I couldn't remember if it was Star Wars or not last night that I watched. Was when he gets in the Millennium Falcon, he's like, "You're a wonderful human being, Jabba." I'm like, "What the fuck? This ain't no human being."
Yeah, I mean, as it's written, as it stands in the movie, it's kind of funny because he's like, "Oh, he's not a human," but it's probably originally, in the original, as it was originally filmed, it was intended to be straightforward. Kind of funny still, but.
And they had to the only part of it I think that really doesn't work is what you were talking about with him stepping on the tail. In the original scene, he's walking circles around Jabba the Hutt, but of course, Jabba, you wouldn't be able to walk circles around Jabba the Hutt. So they very clumsily just rotoscope Photoshop. It was like it's clumsy. It's like flash animation.
When you
like going over his.
When you watch it, you can see his model jump up, but it doesn't fit right.
It's not. His shoulder. If you actually were stepping over or on that tail, your shoulders and stuff would also move. And it doesn't. It does not look good. It was just a bad decision, and I get why he did it because
toys.
I think toys, but that's probably all it is.
I know I'm gonna die on that hill.
Get some benefit of the doubt and be like he really liked this scene and hadn't wanted to cut it in the first place, but he had been forced to cut it because of theatrical runtime issues. And so it's like, well, now I can do whatever I want. I always like that scene. I'm going to put it back in, except that scene doesn't make any sense now that we've established that Hutts are lizard people. So I've got to figure something else out.
I mean, plus when you think about the fact that he made so much money in merchandising rights.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, especially at this point, like when he's remaking these movies, I mean, he knew they're going to sell toys and they're going to sell merchandise. So every little scene that you put, especially new scenes, that's new toys that had never been in the market. And as I know from experience, if somebody has yes, they're making money off a product, but they're making extra money off a certain part of that product, they're going to make decisions that benefit them versus the art of what they're doing or what their job is. And that's what I feel like happens in these, especially in the prequels and with these movies too. That's what he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's really all it is. I kind of want to believe that he had some artistic, integrity. I think he probably did when he made the movie originally, when he made the original movie. I think he had a lot of artistic integrity.
Right.
And he became a billionaire.
But not when he goes back into the special editions and he has the prequels coming, I would say not at that point. He's all focused on the money at that point. Yeah. I mean, hell, that's what Phantom Menace is about. They're all about taxation.
He was going through a divorce at the time also. Might have cost him a lot of money.
Yeah. He was a businessman. He became a businessman and very successful businessman, but nonetheless, not an artist, not an independent filmmaker anymore.
No, I mean, that really does affect you.
When he does try to make a film, I mean,
this podcast don't make money, but
we get red tails,
Yeah.
He didn't own that, though.
Right. Well, that's my point. It's like,
but it's from the mind of George Lucas. So
right.
So
but anyway, I don't actually mind this scene at all. It doesn't look good. I don't think it takes away from the movie. I just don't think it's necessary. I think the way it was before was better.
Right.
Especially because over the trilogy, Han Solo, we get the mention of Jabba here. Han Solo's running from Jabba, running from this debt with Jabba. Empire, we know that Jabba is still, he's worried about Jabba. At the beginning, he's talking about that he's got to leave Hoth and go pay Jabba back now that he's got some money. And then in Jedi, we actually finally meet Jabba, and it's just, it's so well done and so, I don't know, evocative. And so showing Jabba at the beginning takes away that looming dread that covers the trilogy.
Yeah, it's here's a big scene in this movie that doesn't pay off for 3 to 2 more movies because there's no ending to the Jabba story in this. So the only reason to put it in would be if you knew Jabba was going to show up in the third movie. Like there's no reason for it to go in there unless you already know that Jabba's coming later. So yeah, I agree with you. It's fine, but it's unnecessary, and it's honestly slows down everything. Mm-hmm. It's just a couple more minutes of talking as opposed to action. So
yeah. And also, it doesn't make any sense that he would. I mean, it comes after he's killed Greedo, right?
Right. Like, why would you send Greedo if you're literally in the next building?
Well, and not just that.
Yeah.
So you kill the mob boss's dude that was sent to fetch you. And they're like, all right, now I'm going to go chill with the mob boss. I'm going to go meet him anyway. I'm going to go talk to him.
Right.
I mean, it's presumably they're at the Millennium Falcon, so I guess Jabba came to him. But also, Jabba doesn't come to you. You come to Jabba.
Right.
Right? Like, the mob boss doesn't come to visit you. You get grabbed and taken to see him. And if you kill the guy that comes to grab you, you skip town.
Right.
We also know that, that Jabba's palace is not next to Mos Eisley. It's next to Mos Espa, right? I think it was.
Yeah,
well, that is also
again, it was not in this movie or anything, but I mean, we just watched Book of Boba Fett, so
it does not make any sense. Yeah.
No. Yes. That is the thing. The more we add to Star Wars, the less the originals make sense. It's why they're best viewed as if the other movies and TV stuff doesn't exist, I think.
Yeah.
Which is very much how I look at this movie.
So I guess we get introduced to the Millennium Falcon, and this was like the coolest ship that had ever been in anything ever.
That's very true.
I disagree, but yes.
What better ship had we gotten by 1977?
Enterprise.
I guess, but the Enterprise is so like clean and sterile.
I love the Enterprise.
And yeah, I mean, I am a big Star Trek fan, but I don't know, like the
Millennium Falcon
just feels
Enterprise.
It feels real. The Millennium Falcon feels like a real thing.
I also like X-Wings better than the Falcon.
Well,
okay,
yes, but we haven't seen an X-Wing up to this point.
No, I just don't like. I don't like the Falcon in general. I don't have a soft spot for that ship. Even with Star Wars, my soft spot is the X-Wing is what I really like. That's my ship in Star Wars, even in this movie.
Yeah, on the shelf behind me, I have an X-Wing, I have two Millennium Falcons, two AT-ATs, a Y-Wing, and some random ship from one of the cartoons, and a Death Star, all behind me on the shelves, either Legos or just like the play sets. So yeah, I've got two Millennium Falcons. I've got the Kenner Millennium Falcon from the re-release Power of the Force series from 1997, and then I've got the Lego Force Awakens one behind me. So yeah, I'm a big Millennium Falcon fan. I love that stuff. I made my own when I was a kid. I made like these just poster board models of ships, and I specifically made an X-Wing, a TIE Fighter, and Millennium Falcon were the ones I made. Like I just love the Millennium Falcon's design. It looks like a hunk of junk, but then it is that muscle car thing of American Graffiti where he's got this old clunker that he's like souped up. He's put like a big engine in, and so it can go super fast. And it's also got all this smuggler stuff. It's got like the little like smuggler bins where he can hide cargo from inspectors.
Right.
It's really cool, and it has those turrets. It has the turrets, like the anti-aircraft gun turrets on it.
It's so cool. It was so cool when I was a kid. You got the double guns, the quad guns, I guess. Yeah. Yeah,
and so what I thought was really neat is my dad was a Korean War veteran, and he was a tail gunner on a B-29, and so the B-29 has those turrets like that, and the tail gun one, the turret you're in doesn't move, but the guns do.
Oh,
and so,
okay.
It was like a big. So you're like in a cockpit on the tail of the plane, basically, and then you've got these twin 50 caliber machine guns that are on like a moving gantry thing that you move. And so it's like, my dad had taken me to an air show, and he had taken me not on a B-29, but he'd show me like we had walked all around and on a B-17, which is what he trained on. And the B-17 has those bubble turrets just like the Millennium Falcon.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Again, they don't really move. The guns are what move, because moving the whole thing would be like really complicated the way they move there. But still, it's like really neat to like as a kid. We went to that air show when I was 7, and then I got into Star Wars more when I was like 10, 11, 12. And seeing that, I'm like, oh, that's just like the B-17. I have a B-17 actually on the shelf to my right. I have a model of a B-17.
Wow.
So
it's all coming together.
It is all coming together. Like I never really thought about that, but yeah, that was like foundational for me. Is like my dad showing me this and be like, see this right here? This is the thing I trained on. This is the plane. And it's got those guns. And you see Star Wars and it's like they're moving around on them and stuff. And of course, the Star Wars ones, he was basing it on the anti-aircraft turrets on battleships, on naval ships in World War II. Because that's something we haven't really talked about a lot, but I mentioned it earlier with the Western thing, is that Lucas is a film nerd. And he is, I don't think it's copying. I think it's homage. He is making lots of homages to classic films.
Yeah. There's so many of them. I mean, there's the Hidden Fortress is one,
right?
With it's mainly C-3PO and R2-D2, and the Princess are lifted from that. There's also I'm sure there are many more. There's also the Searchers as well, the famous Western of John Wayne with the burning homestead. I don't know if you've seen that, Mike, but
no idea what you're talking about.
The Searchers is like it might be John Wayne's best movie. It is like definitely his darkest Western. Even though he doesn't die in it, he dies in The Cowboys and The Shootist. Those are the only two movies he dies in. But The Searchers is really dark and really well made movie.
There's a scene in The Searchers where John Wayne comes back to see a homestead burning, and it was an Apache Indian attack, and somebody's been kidnapped, and a lot of people have been killed, and he just stares at the burning homestead, and it's exactly like Luke coming back and seeing his aunt and uncle dead and everything burned down.
Hey, we didn't talk about that.
Well, I mean,
we skipped over that. Yeah,
there's so much to talk about, but yeah,
but where they're on the Millennium Falcon and they're firing at the TIE fighters, that was a reference to a specific World War II movie. But I don't recall which one, but it might be Tora Tora Tora. I'm not sure, but it is. There's like a specific World War II movie. I don't think it's Tora 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 because I saw a thing where they're comparing it, and it was a black and white film, and Tora 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 is
the trench run was taken from the Dam Busters, which is a movie about blowing up a German dam, and so they have to fly planes through a canyon, and they have to hit the dam right in the right spot to blow up the dam.
Yeah.
And there is a compilation on YouTube where a lot of the dialogue and scenes are lifted from that movie. That's and it's not, I wouldn't say it's a theft. It's more of a homage, but if you watch it too,
it's very much an homage. Yeah.
You would say he was definitely watching this movie as they were editing, the trench run, because it's just exact dialogue.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. I was thinking the where they're on the Millennium Falcon with the TIE fighter turrets shooting the TIE fighters. That's like a specific World War II where they're on the anti-aircraft guns. But there's a lot of those homages, and there's some where I'm not sure. Like the Dam Busters and Hidden Fortress and the Searchers, those are explicit. I was showing you guys last night like a samurai movie I really like called Harikari.
And
the duel at the end of that movie in being very similar to the duel that comes up in this movie in some ways, which it may not have been that movie because there's a lot of movies like that. But that was a movie that, had been out for 15 years. And we know that Lucas is a film of those like Japanese samurai movies. He's a film of like these World War II movies. Yeah.
Very true.
But also I feel like movies at this time wouldn't have, especially older stuff like this, wouldn't have been something that you could easily find.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Like people wouldn't know. It's not like today where you can Google it or look it up on YouTube.
General audience would have had no idea. It was something, a lot of this, you see a lot of stuff from Lucas and Spielberg where they're referencing film nerd stuff. I mean, Tarantino's the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like, when we watch a Tarantino film, that every single scene is an homage to some obscure kung fu movie that you can only buy at a black market in Thailand. But, he's not making those. He's doing that for his fellow film nerds to be like, look, this is just like that thing from Shogun Assassin, isn't it? It's that kind of thing. And it's the same thing. I think Lucas was kind of showing off to his classmates, his friends.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about, like when you the whole Alderaan thing, like, I mean, that's what gets them in trouble. And that the fact that they're really just they don't have much of a mission. They're just kind of going along with the flow of what's happening in their adventure. Like when they get to Alderaan and there's nothing there, they're like, oh, there's an asteroid field here. There shouldn't be. And I still love the line when he sees the Death Star. Oh, that TIE fighter's going to that moon. That's no moon.
It's a great line.
Still love it.
That's no moon. It's a space station. What? There's no space station that big.
And also, I do have a question. How the hell did that space station get from where it blows up Alderaan all the way to where it's going to blow up the moon on Yavin 4?
hyperdrive.
But could something that big have a hyperdrive?
It's the biggest hyperdrive.
There's no reason. I mean, we don't know how hyperdrives work, but there's no reason to think it wouldn't.
They made
Yeah, go ahead.
They made a good choice in Rogue One not to show it in hyperspace, because it would look very silly to have the Death Star going through hyperspace. But you know that it happens. I think they might show it coming out of hyperspace or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the thing is, we're never really explained what hyperspace is or how it works. We just know that you press this thing and everything stretches, and and then you're in some sort of like tunnel of like stars. And I think the extended universe books did a good job of explaining it. And of course, again, it's not canon, but they explain it as like essentially that you're creating like your own like wormhole, basically. Okay. And so in that sense, the size doesn't really matter.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just nitpicking, but I was curious.
Yeah.
If you want to nitpick, we could talk about Empire, where the hyperdrive isn't working, and yet they're somehow able to get from Hoth to Bespin in a matter of what charitably might have been a few months, which means that Hoth and Bespin are roughly the same distance as Earth and Mars from each other. Right? That's the issue, is that the Bespin says that the rebels decided to make their secret base right next to an existing like Imperial controlled mining colony, though they didn't know it was Imperial.
We'll get there hopefully next month.
Yeah, but still, that's where you can start to nitpick. But here, it's fine that the Death Star can
I also like the whole idea how they just get like, they end up getting too close to the Death Star, and they end up getting caught in the tractor beam. They get sucked into the ship, and their whole idea, we're going to hide in the floorboards. I still love the scene.
Yeah, they're the smuggler panels I was talking about, right?
Great.
Which it makes sense. Like, he's a smuggler. He would have little hidden cargo areas that you can't, I guess they have like whatever, because they bring on like some scanning equipment. You see them bring on scanning.
That's a great scene when they go up there and you hear like somebody, and the guy's like, "Hey, we need some help up here." Yeah. And they beat the shit out of them and take.
And then doesn't the stormtrooper helmet like roll down the gangplank? Am I remembering correctly?
I think
second.
I don't think that happens exactly.
No,
something happened. You hear the blasters, but it's just funny.
It is great. It was a great plan having them dress up.
No, what you're talking about happens in the Lego games, I think.
Oh, okay.
That sounds like a Lego thing. I mean, I was thinking like, that makes sense, but so that's a good scene. And oh god, when they go to the office up in the little control office and they just kind of like bust in. Yeah, that's fucking hilarious. Still to me, I love it.
It is great, and the Chewie's there, and they just shoot all these Imperial guys. Yeah.
It's not as good as the detention scene when they
detention center.
Oh god, when they bring him with the handcuffs, and they're like, "Oh god, he's free!" They throw him a gun.
Yeah, like look out, he's loose.
That was a great plan.
Him a gun.
It's a great plan, but then they're like, "What's going on down there?" It's like, "Oh, we just had a slight weapons malfunction, but we're good. We're all good here. How are you?"
Always cracks me up. Always cracks me up. No matter, I know it's coming, but I love it.
It's so funny, and then he shoots the thing, and because they're like, "We're coming right now." Oh, we're gonna have company now. Boring conversation anyway.
He goes, boring conversation anyway.
I mean,
we're gonna have company.
People complain about some of the humor in the later movies, but it's always been there. Like it's a little corny joke, but it kind of works.
But it's fun. It's fun, and it's not just like slapstick. I mean, it's not the cartoon rabbit stepping in the poop.
Right. Exactly.
It's funny to adults as well. Mm-hmm. And I like just Princess Leia. We haven't talked about her being in this at all. She is a badass.
Yes.
For the entire film, even when she's captive, she is a badass at every single step of the way.
Yeah.
From when she's shooting stormtroopers on the Tantive 5 to, and basically just like all but spitting in Vader's face.
Yeah.
Completely just not oblivious to the danger she's in, but just unconcerned.
Yeah. Even
brave.
To save Alderaan, when she gives him a fake address, or a fake planet to go to.
I love it.
Even when she knows she's going to die. Like, she knows they're going to kill her. She's like, fuck you.
She tells them Dantooine instead of Yavin. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, there's nothing there. They look there. Like, it's just, everything that she does is so good. And, like, that scene where she's in the cell, and he's like, we're going to make you talk. And a little, I always call him torture droid comes in. And that still makes me go, oh, like.
Oh, the torture droid looks painful.
Yes. Yeah. I'm assuming it's supposed to be truth serum is what's in the vial, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and so presumably that's how they,
But they don't get the correct information anyway, so.
But they still don't. Yeah, how did they figure out they're on Yavin? Did they follow them?
They put a tracker on the Millennium Falcon. They let them escape. Because, I mean, everything's quiet. Obi-Wan is going to go turn off the tractor beam, but when they go to the prison and they make all the noise, that's when they're alerted to their presence.
I was just trying to think about the droid. There, I said her resistance to the mind probe was something like that.
I didn't catch that.
Vader says it to Tarkin, I believe. Like, her resistance to the mind probe proved effective or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
that's what I was thinking. I don't remember the tracker thing.
There's a line that is in they put a tracker on the Falcon, and then when they get to Yavin, she even says on the way there, this was too easy. They let us escape.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. But I like, when she's in the cell and Luke comes in and she's like, you're a little short for a stormtrooper, aren't you? I love it. She's like, she's in prison. Presumably she's going to be executed. She probably assumes that they're going to execute her.
Right.
Her family and her entire society that she grew up in has been destroyed. And she's still just like talking shit.
Right.
She's awesome. She's so cool. And then she like takes control of the rescue. She's like, this is some rescue. And she like takes over. You get out of there.
You would think that if she could get out of that cell, she'd be doing this already. Like, if only the cell was just a little less secure, she would have a blaster and like.
Yeah, she would already have escaped if the cell wasn't, if they had let up a little bit. And I mean, she straight up, she takes a blaster and she kills stormtroopers. Right. Just like bam, bam, just like center mass, and then rescues everyone.
Yeah, she rescues them. I mean, she puts them in the trash compactor, which I couldn't remember the name of that creature, but I know both of you will know it.
Oh, I forgot. I mean, it was
Dianoga.
I knew one of you would know it for sure.
It was made up for the playset. If you remember Dark Forces, there are a lot of Dianogas in that game.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I that's still such a good little like horror scene in a sense, where they end up in this trash compactor and they're having to, try to figure out what to do, and then you have C-3PO being a fucking dumbass. I forgot. He's like, I forgot to turn on the comm link. And I'm like, you asshole.
Yeah, and he's still talking. He's like, we were wondering. That's C-3PO, shut up.
Turn off all the trash. Oh, God. Yeah. I was too slow, R2. They're screaming.
Yes.
Shut off all the trash compactors on the detection level.
Yeah. That line
when they're cheering and he's like, oh, they're dead.
Yeah. Those cheers always got me when people's like, oh, no, they're dying. How horrible. Yeah. I was always
Oh, I love it. And by the way, C-3PO, C-3PO and R2-D2, they make the perfect like little like comedy relief in this movie. Again, without being stupid, right? Without,
yes, they are
bullshit.
They have a point. So compared to Jar Jar, doesn't really have a point, but they have a point. Like, they're serious at times, and you empathize with them, and they are funny. So they fit all the criteria. They move the plot forward, even with the humor.
And it's very much. I've wondered before, like, is this Jay and Silent Bob? Is this like a reference?
It wouldn't surprise me.
The annoying tall one and the stoic, quiet, shorter one. I don't know. It might be. I might be off, but I do like that a lot. I didn't know as a kid. I didn't know about the Hidden Fortress till much later. I remember in high school reading Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, and thinking like, I wonder if that's where he got C-3PO and R2-D2 from. Is from Hamlet, from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Even though they're only in one scene. Well, they only speak in one scene, and then they die presumably.
Yeah.
But still. I don't know, but no, you're right. Hidden Fortress has those two like peasant characters, like bumbling peasant guys.
I want to watch this now and review it for some reason.
Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen it. Peter's seen it, right?
I saw it a long time ago. I think when you're younger, you don't appreciate Japanese cinema or maybe adult movies. It's not quite Star Wars, and it's much slower in pace than Star Wars. But if you watched it, you would pick up on some elements of Star Wars.
Okay.
So,
yeah, from what I've read, he based his original draft off of it and then took out a lot of the stuff for the movie, and then he put that stuff back into Phantom Menace. And so some of the stuff in Phantom Menace of them like going back to the princess's planet part, I think some of that is from it.
Okay.
But
okay.
I'm not sure though.
I'll have to add it to my list of just things I want to someday get to.
I had one more note about the droids. I mentioned at one point they do call them Luke calls them robots, which I think is the only time they call them robots. Yeah, and I think it was just probably interesting.
If you think about it, that's probably like really offensive.
Yeah,
because robots are mindless automatons, and droids appear to have personalities and feelings.
Well, hey, the biggest serial killer in the Star Wars series is a droid in Rebels. He has the highest kill rate of anybody. I forget what it is, but it's a meme that goes on. I forget his name, but it's that droid, Chopper. He has the highest kill rate, people have said, because they put together everything. They're like, yeah, he's killed everybody.
Wow.
You need to watch
the little like R5 unit that's on
Watch Rebels. Damn it. It's good.
I'm watching The Bad Batch now with my son, and I heard it wasn't good, and I like it.
Yeah, I didn't.
I mean, it's very much for little kids, but as a little kid Star Wars thing goes, it's really quite good.
Okay.
It's
not
dark.
bad.
Well, you know what? So we've only watched like the first maybe 10 episodes, but so far it really feels like somebody at Lucasfilm read the Republic Commando novels, which are my favorite Star Wars thing that isn't the original trilogy. And we're like, well, we can't make this because we don't want to have to pay Karen Travis. But what if we made something kind of like it? It really extremely is riffing on. I mean, there's no way they didn't read Republic Commando. It's like clearly the plot of Republic Commando. Only you replace the little New Zealand girl with a young Jedi instead, and it's Republic Commando.
Okay, it's interesting. You have my.
Those are good.
I don't read.
Those
books.
are good books. You should read all 4 Republic Commando books and then have me on for a podcast about it.
All right.
Or we could just play the video game.
I did that for episode 21.
You did.
But I do want to recover it at some point because I want to replay it now.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So
but, I want to talk about the Death Star. Like the whole scene of them escaping as they get out of there, and they're running around. Like there's the scene where Han chases after a bunch of guys, and he's running down the hall, and then they go into a huge squad. And he starts running the other way.
He shoots one first. He shoots one and then runs.
It's great. He's like, ah!
That whole scene is awesome. Leia calling Chewbacca walking carpet.
Great.
And then the scene where they're trying to escape over the bridge, and she's like, use the bridge control. He's like, I think I shot it.
Yeah. And then he uses that grappling hook thing instead.
For the one time ever.
Right.
One time. There's a really good episode of Mythbusters in their final season where they just did Star Wars stunts, and they tried to do that scene.
Oh, yeah.
They could not do it. It was like they said it was so incredibly painful trying to swing across on that on a belt mounted grappling hook thing like that. Incredibly painful.
It works in a serial adventure, but it's not going to be physically really feasible.
But it's I do like that part. I also am like, man, why has the Death Star got all these just gigantic holes?
Right. I mean, what is the bit OSHA would be terrified? Is that?
Yeah, it's just all of these just
it's like
no railing,
no
safety railing.
The tractor beam controls are on a narrow shaft with no railing right above a bottomless pit that presumably leads to the reactor. So it's like, what if you need to reset the controls? Do you have a droid do that, or you have to go on this perilous walkway? It makes no sense.
Probably a droid.
Why does the bridge retract in the first place? Is this
right?
Security.
Okay.
Just for this scenario, I guess it's true.
What it makes me think of is in Galaxy Quest.
Oh yeah.
When they get to the room that's just the smashing pistons and stuff. I'm like, why is this here?
Right. That's very true.
Also, I think stormtroopers don't matter to them either. So I take it
that is
they don't care.
True.
Well, are the stormtroopers supposed to be clones in this originally?
No.
It's
okay.
Yeah. They never say, but they never really say about this era of stormtroopers, I don't think.
The only mention of clones is we served in the Clone Wars together.
Okay.
Right.
That's it. There's never any mention of clones.
Yeah, I think in the old canon, it was recruits. For a couple, in the old canon up to the new EU, it was always you got recruited, and if you could basically point a gun and shoot it, you could be a stormtrooper.
Yeah. The expanded universe set up that these are recruits, and then of course that's not canon anymore. But the official canon now is also that they're recruits. That's what the Bad Batch is about.
They're just was it is it orphan children or something something like that?
It was just it's all sorts of stuff. In the Bad Batch, which is canon, they basically the whole deal that's going on is there's these faction within the military. Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin wants to replace the clone army with a recruit army because it'll be cheaper.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Way cheaper. And then in the expanded universe, it was, they're just recruits and conscripts also because there's a draft.
Yeah.
They mentioned a draft in the deleted scene of this movie.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
They do. And so there's a draft, and then with the sequels, we get Finn and definitely not Lando's daughter, who are talking about being orphans and basically being like snatched up. And that's talked about in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And
okay.
as much as I am not a fan of Rise of Skywalker, I think that is completely makes sense. It completely makes sense. And I think about like, have y'all seen Jojo Rabbit?
No.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Oh, the movie is so good, and how they show the Hitler Youth in that and everything. I feel like that's what this would be like. Is you would have these like paramilitary recruiting things where you're like conditioning children at a young age to serve the Empire blindly and be very militaristic, because that's what actually happened.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you also look at like with Solo kind of explains a little bit with that where like Han is going to just sign up to join the
Yeah, that's true.
Be a recruit.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he has nothing.
Right.
So, I mean, all that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, these are the people that are going to feed you. These are the people that are going to give you a place. So yeah, you're going to join the military.
And just one last thing, the stormtroopers in this, they have different voice actors. Like they're different people talking. So it's not like in the prequels where every single clone, like I'm watching the Bad Batch and it's just this one person voicing every single clone. And I'm like, I guess that makes sense. I mean, your vocal cords would be the same. So, okay, sure. Though they have clearly different voices. It's whatever. All right. Anyway.
I think some of them were dubbed by Harry Shearer, if I'm not mistaken, who did, from The Simpsons, Mr. Burns and all that. Well, Harry Shearer did some of the voices for this because a lot of them were spoken British accents, and they were like, nobody understands what these British people are saying. So.
Yeah, that is really cool. I do like the conversation the two stormtroopers are having when Obi-Wan has to say this. Like, oh, you've seen the new such and such?
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty cool. They're just like, it's exactly what you would expect. They would be like, two soldiers shooting the shit. They're on guard duty, on this pointless guard duty. Oh, we're supposed to stand here and guard this random bridge over a bottomless pit. All right. Anyway, have you seen the new such and such? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they say like, oh, is it another drill or something? Somebody says that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's good. And like another thing I want to mention, like the scene where you see where Obi-Wan gets killed, like, where he fights Vader. I mean, I know you're saying that's a reference to an old samurai film we talked about before this recording.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it is or not. It definitely looks like it's refereing some of those films. Because the way they kind of test each other out.
Right.
And it's very much they like if you ever watch like Kendo Jitsu, the Japanese, samurai, the main samurai sword art, right? The katana art, where they do kind of stalk very slowly, and then it's pop, 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 and then back, and pop, 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 back, and that's what they do. And this is they very like slowly advance on each other and then cross swords one or two times and back up. And that's
makes sense. I mean, a duel wouldn't be just attacking. I mean, it's about skill because it only takes one hit with a sword or a lightsaber and you're done.
Right.
Yeah.
That limb is coming off, or that your chest is being opened up. Like you're not going to be okay.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'll say, I've been practicing martial arts for a few years, and we finally, because of COVID, we hadn't been sparring, and so we finally started sparring recently. And if you go all out, you get hit. It hurts. And I'm just like imagining with a sword, I would be extremely careful. I would not be attempting to hit this person right here because I would be afraid I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And I'm currently bruised and kind of hurting from just like 5 nights ago. So I'm like, I get it.
Also, there's a scene in this movie way earlier that makes me laugh now every time because the irony of it, where when you find the sandcrawler and it's all blown up, he's like, these shots are too accurate for sand people.
Oh yeah,
right.
He's only the Imperial stormtroopers are this accurate. I'm like, wow, that line does not age well the rest of the series.
Well, it's funny because it became a joke. It became a meme. But I mean, they're just missing the way people miss in movies. Because in movies, if they were actually accurate, then the movie would be over too soon.
Right.
But they just made this whole thing of like, oh, they're not accurate. And they do that in the Bad Batch. They show the recruits shooting and they're just like really terrible at it. And the clones are like, really? This is what you're replacing us with?
It's just one of those funny things that I maybe when I went back and watched this movie, and then like them okay, so you have the duel, and like having Obi-Wan lets himself get killed and have Luke see that, like that's such a powerful moment too, where he's like, once you kill me, I'll be more powerful. And I laugh this time when after Vader kills him, even though they're trying to escape into the Falcon, later doesn't go to the door first. First he goes to the pile of clothes and kicks the clothes.
Pokes him with his toes like, huh? What?
Yeah.
And then he starts to walk to the door.
I love it. And I actually want to talk about that whole thing with Vader. When they first arrive, Vader's like, like you could tell he knows Obi-Wan's there. He can sense him, but he can't tell exactly where he's at. So he doesn't know if he's on the ship or if he's already gotten off.
Also,
and he just kind of silently walks away and goes, and he's there waiting for him because he knows where he's going to be.
Right.
And that duel is so perfect.
When he senses him, he doesn't say, he says, I haven't felt this in a long time. He doesn't see, he's like, I haven't felt this since when, and he stops talking. And I love that. I'm like, you could have easily ruined it, said, I haven't seen him since the Clone Wars or something. But
he could have done something cheesy there, and they didn't.
He stops talking where they're like, we don't know where we're going to go with this, so we're not going to dig a hole we have to fill. We're just going to...
Well, it's really good acting. That trailing off like that is exactly what you could do if you could feel someone's presence tickling your mind. Yeah. You would be like, what is going on? Like, is he here? I like that. And I like their duel. I like the, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Only a master of evil, Darth. And oh, man. It's like, so that is my actual favorite scene of the movie. My second favorite is the boardroom, but my favorite scene of the movie is that right there.
And then the escape is really simple for them when they get off the Death Star. I mean, they fight a couple. They have the little part where I still like
they
this
kill
part.
like 7 people.
Yeah, and when they fight the TIE fighters, don't get caught, kid. Still like
that's what we were talking about earlier with the turrets. Yeah, I got ahead of myself. I always think the TIE fighter thing's before that, but it's after.
I did too. I didn't remember when it was. Peter, do you want to say about the Death Star still before we move on?
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
I've said a lot of good stuff, but I like the duel scene where the TIE fighter duel is coming up, because it's like you just had a big action scene and there's like an emotional high, but then you like any good serial, you get right into another action scene right away.
Yeah.
And they could have easily just had them fly to Yavin, but they added this one little bonus action, and I think that was a really good choice because the music's great.
This could have been the end of the movie too.
Right.
By the way.
Yeah.
It could have.
Like Obi-Wan dying and then them getting away and destroying the TIE fighter, that feels like it could be the end of the movie. But then we still have a whole other act of the movie left.
But it's also the shortest act. This is only only about 20 or 30 minutes, or I think it's 20 minutes. It's not long. Where they get to Yavin, you have a scene of some random guy. Oh, Luke, I haven't seen you since then. Like, who the fuck are you? Deleted scene, you assholes you took out. I'm going to complain on that. And
we have General John Dodonna like showing them the Death Star plans and all that.
It's the
only CG in the movie.
Yeah, the only computer generated, and it's very primitive, but it still works because it looks like it's just a blueprint. It's just a blueprint of the Death Star. Yeah. It's like
it looks good.
They should be a lot madder at Han Solo and Luke because they're the reasons why they're in trouble like this.
Well,
they needed the plans. I mean,
they needed the plans. Like, without Han Solo and Luke, they wouldn't have the plans to the Death Star. And this thing is gonna. I mean, even if it's not going to destroy them, it's going to destroy other planets like Alderaan that support the rebels. And so they've got to destroying the Death Star. This is like their big thing. So no, I think I get it. I get it. And ultimately, also, I think a lot of them look at Leia as like, I don't know. This may be a lot of the like extended universe creeping in, but I always felt like they looked at Leia as like the kind of the heir to the leadership. Like, I think that Jimmy Smits is supposed to be kind of really a major leader of the rebellion.
Right.
And
yeah.
It's his daughter. It's Bail Organa's daughter.
Yeah. Right? Now that he's gone, she's got to take up the mantle. So I
don't know if that was really planned or not, but that's definitely what it's hard for me because I've seen these movies so much, but I've also read, 38 Star Wars novels. And so I've got all this like EU stuff in my head that's not canon anymore. But
it's hard to divorce yourself from what you know.
It is. I'm just like
come to this
with her. Yeah, I'm watching her as like, 17-year-old princess. And I'm also thinking about her as Chancellor of the New Republic.
Right.
It makes sense.
And yeah.
I did want to. Oh,
go ahead.
I just want to say one thing before I forget. There was when Luke comes to Yavin, he meets up with Biggs, and we're introduced to the character really for the first time theoretically. There was a scene where Red Leader comes over and he talks to them, and he barely says, "You'll do fine." In the in deleted scenes you can find in YouTube, there is a scene where Red Leader comes over and says, "Oh, you're Skywalker. Hi, I knew your father in the Clone Wars. He was a good pilot, and so you will be too. They cut that out of the scene that's in the movie, but it's just an interesting artifact, and it kind of proves that, they didn't have this planned out beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't.
Well, I mean, they make good on that in the prequels. They have Anakin as like a star pilot in the Clone Wars, so it's fine. But yeah, I think it is better not having that.
Right, exactly.
Now the Red Leader's not Wedge, right? Wedge is just a member of Red Squadron at this point, right?
Yeah, Red Leader's like he's like the seasoned pilot who tries to shoot the thing and misses. So.
And he hits the rim, and then
doesn't like everybody die that goes out there almost?
Except for like Wedge and maybe one other pilot. They all
Wedge lives. Does Red Leader die?
Yeah, Red Leader dies. He gets
he does.
Right after he says it impacted on the surface, and then he gets shot down.
Yeah. And don't forget about Porkins.
Right, because he was going to make a second. Yeah, Porkins dies. Biggs dies.
They kill.
There's like Tyree, Hutch. Well, we could talk about Yavin. Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's such a brutal scene. Like, I mean, looking back at this, and I'm to me, brutal as an idea how bad. Like, all these pilots get together. They go to the Death Star. They have literally half an hour or less before the Death Star is going to destroy them. I think 15 minutes. You pointed out a funny.
And Han Solo leaves.
Yeah.
Han Solo leaves, and you're like, oh man. And it's like, and Luke's like, oh, I guess that's all you care about. You got your money. I guess that's all you care about anyway. And Han's like trying to get him to come with him because Han's not a bad guy, but he's not a revolutionary. He's just a dude getting by in the universe, and he doesn't want to get caught up in some. Rebellion. How many of us would have been like, yeah, hell yeah, let's join the rebellion. We're going to fight. Like, most people would just be like, I'm just going to get the hell out of here.
Right. You're screwed. Your plan's about to get...
It's a space station the size of a moon that can blow up planets, guys. Like, pack up, live to fight another day. Like, you can kind of see it, but the whole thing is really good. And that they just give Luke a TIE fighter. I mean, a starfighter. They're like, here, all right, here's an X-Wing.
I mean, the way I look at it now is that they don't have that many pilots. I mean...
Yeah, no, they needed him. I get it.
Yeah.
There's only, I think you see is 12 X-Wings and like 6 Y-Wings is all you see in that original.
And that scene, though, like I know it's an extended edition scene because I remember being advertised constantly back when these special editions came out, where the TIE fighters go in front of the planet Yavin.
Or the X-Wings.
X-Wings, sorry. Yeah, and that scene is so good. Except I didn't realize till you guys pointed out that the Death Stars, in that scene, the Death Stars lined up so they don't need to wait.
Yeah.
It's minor, but...
It's like... Because Yavin they're not on Yavin. They're on Yavin 4, which is a moon of Yavin. And the Death Star is circling around Yavin to get to where it can hit the moon. So, I mean, I don't think that it lines. I don't think in that scene it lines up.
It's close though.
It is close, but it should be. They don't want to hit Yavin for whatever reason.
I think it's a beautiful shot, so I don't. Maybe the gas giant's too big. It's probably just too big to blow up.
That's my thought process. I think it looks beautiful. Okay. This is the thing I was going to say with the special editions. The only things I like about the special editions is I like this part, and then I feel like they did a good job of just grading some of the like special effects stuff, like make the lightsabers look more real, the blaster shots look better, things like the little remaster stuff is what I like in the special editions. And then this scene of them flying in front of Yavin and opening their attack foils and stuff. Yeah. They don't open them here yet, do they?
I think no, they don't yet. They're just cruising, and then when they say lock in your attack foils or something.
Yeah. It says open attack foils open S foils to attack position. That's what it is.
Right.
And
they call them S foils.
And like this whole scene, what they're doing, I think it hit me more this watch, where you think about like this is their last chance. If they fail, the rebels are done, and they have to fly into a trench full of turrets. I mean, they send fighters after them later on. Like, I mean, it's a suicide run. Period.
Yeah. It is, and they're all like throwing themselves at it. It's D-Day, of just like we're gonna throw 110,000 soldiers at these beaches into machine gun fire, and as long as they can as long as enough of them can survive to get up to the cliff, it's that. So it is. It's a really well done scene, and I want to see that. You said it's called the Dam Breakers,
Dam Busters,
Dam Busters,
1955. Yeah, Google it.
Yeah, I want to see that, to see the.
That does sound cool, but just like what they go through and Like, and the thing that saves Vader's life that he can be in another movie, thankfully for Lucas, that they didn't kill him. That he leaves the Death Star. He's like, I'll go do it myself, and he gets into I love his TIE fighter, by the way. I love that
Vader's TIE fighter. It's like it looks kind of like a big TIE interceptor.
Yes.
But we haven't seen TIE interceptors yet. They didn't introduce those until Jedi. But it looks like a big TIE intercept, like a bigger TIE interceptor.
It's a great fighter, and like that idea that it
has shields apparently.
But he goes behind them, and he's the reason that they start failing because he's taken out a bunch of the pilots.
Yeah, exactly. He's taken them out left.
He's a great pilot.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, Mike, it's brutal because you see all these like young pilots who are just like almost get to what they're doing. They all get brutally blown up, and you see them like explode, and they're like, ah! And it is brutal. It's like it takes his fantasy to a new level where it's it's kind of a whimsical fantasy.
Doesn't Luke cry out when Biggs dies?
I think he kind of definitely gives a sad face, or he's like, oh no. I don't know if he cries out exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember now, but I inject a lot of this is so good and it looks so cool. And if you see how they made it, it's so amazing because they just straight up built this entire thing. It's like it's like in a gigantic room. It's this big 50-foot long model, and they just sped a camera on a dolly down it.
Yeah,
on a hanging dolly thing, and it's really cool because now you would just build this thing in CG, and it would in the best CG ever. It would still not look real the way this looks like an actual thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is an actual thing. That's what I kind of I've converted my son a little bit. It's because I don't want to make him not like the sequels. And I think that's actually the best thing about the sequels is that they do a lot of practical stuff still in them. But he and I were watching the original trilogy recently, and I was like, don't you do you see why this looks so good? It's because they're really doing it. He's like, yeah, that's true. I'm actually converting him a little bit into preferring the practical effects over the
Excellent.
CG.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's the way you have to do it, I think.
Yeah. And so we're watching this, and I'm like, I show him Corridor Crew, and I'm like, he got me into Corridor Crew, the YouTube series, and they do the VFX artists react, where they show how they do special effects and stuff, and they had on one of the guys that worked on the trilogy, and he's just talking about how they did it, and they're showing the models and all that stuff, and it's really cool. It's we watched that, so it's really well done, really great scene, and then we get the Luke use the Force, Luke, right?
Switch off your targeting computer.
You switch off your targeting computer. It's all right. It's that's so cool, and it's such a good idea of him. Because we saw earlier that he couldn't do this,
right?
Because the guy used the computer, he missed, and then it wasn't. If it was, and he's getting lined up, and then it wasn't for the fact that Han Solo comes back, he blows up, he shoots Vader, knocks him off course, and he saves Luke. Otherwise, Luke would have been murdered right there.
And then Luke makes. And I was thinking that it mirrors when Luke, right before Alderaa's blown up, when Luke is training with the lightsaber on the Millennium Falcon, and Obi-Wan's trying to get him to understand that the Force is better than his own senses, right? And so he makes him wear the helmet blacked out, and he's getting shot by the targeting droid. But then he does it, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I did it." And then Obi-Wan collapses because of Alderaan being destroyed. Yeah. And now we're having that same idea of he tries to do it the normal way that anyone else would do it, and he fails, and he has to trust in the Force and believe in himself. And so him turning off the targeting computer is the same as him putting the blast shield over his face in that earlier scene. It's a parallel.
That's when you get the first instinct to okay, this guy's strong in the Force. The Force is strong with this one.
I love that. Yeah, the Force is strong with this one.
Because you can sense he's realizing, oh, who is this guy? This guy is somebody special.
Yeah.
I mean, as we know from the next movie, his whole thing is to try and find whoever blew up the Death Star. But
yeah. Well, I think he finds out because he's straight up. He's the son of Skywalker, or he's telling the Emperor that this guy could be a great asset, and then when he goes to challenge him, so it's he's figured it out by the second movie. And I hope we get to talk about the other movies because that journey of Vader going from the Force is strong in this one to throwing the Emperor down the bottomless pit is that journey is I think a really well done. It pays off. The whole thing. It feels like every step of the way nothing was cheated. There's no cheat there. even though it wasn't originally planned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So then he blows up the Death Star, and the original theatrical version does not look that. And this is another place where I think where I'll give credit to the remake or the special editions. The explosion looks way better in the special editions.
There's a big shock wave.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I also love the line right before where one of the guys comes up to Tarkin. He's like, "This could work. We should evacuate." He's like, "In our moment of triumph."
Right.
Yeah. We can see the Tarkin's hubris. Yes.
And he does him in. He was it General Tag at the beginning. He's like, there's a possibility this could, if they find a weakness, they could exploit it. So you can tell somebody in the Empire is like, we crunched the numbers and this might actually work.
Yeah.
But again, you always have leaders in many different, in real life too. The people are like just are too stuck up their own ass and won't listen to other people when it goes against what they believe.
And that's
and that makes sense to the Empire, which again makes sense to any type of dictatorship, government as history has proven.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean
look at Hitler
again with Hitler and the Nazis. That was a big reason that the Germans lost was everyone was afraid to defy Hitler, and Hitler was not a military strategist. He was a conscripted corporal in the Wehrmacht in World War I, and that's it. But whenever he takes over, he makes bad decisions, attacking Russia or pulling all but 2 divisions out of Normandy.
I have said this to a lot of people over the years that Hitler could have, if he would have done things differently, World War II could have went a lot different.
Oh yeah, well, I teach U.S. history, and I always tell my students the reason that we're speaking English and not German right now is because Hitler decided to attack Russia. Because for some perspective, 485,000 Americans died in World War II, 485 died in World War II, and 28 million Russians died in World War II. So they were doing the majority of the fighting. They were already beating the Nazis by the time we actually joined in the fight. On the Western Front. Yeah, it's true. It's the hubris of these people that become authoritarians, get used to everyone following their orders, so then they get to thinking that they're actually right all the time.
Yeah, I think the ending of Tarkin is great. He's just staring at the screen, he's, as far as he knows, at any moment they're about to fire on Yavin, and then boom, he just out.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Too.
He doesn't have any idea that Luke's just fired that torpedo.
Yeah, I think wasn't the last line commence primary ignition? You could hear in the background or something. They're literally on the cusp of firing.
I love the sounds of the Death Star, that sound effect of
it's powering up.
Yeah, I love it.
And then when you see them fly away, and I also like thinking, I know the joke, it's a side joke, but the fact that Tarkin didn't like the boots, so he's wearing slippers in every scene where you can't see.
Oh, yeah, the actor was, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
He was wearing slippers.
There's only, and I paid attention now, there's only one scene where you see him wearing his boots walking, and you never see his feet again after that one scene.
And you got to do what you got to do. You got to be comfortable on the set.
Oh yeah, it's just. I mean, it doesn't hurt the movie at all. You wouldn't even know if it wasn't something that got out.
Right.
Yeah. I like it. It's good.
It's just hilarious to me now.
All right, so they get back to Yavin, and what happens next, Mike?
Okay, I'm a little hurt, but we'll get there shortly. So I was watching this, and this is the ceremony scene where everybody's, all the people are standing there, and they have a part where they all move, and they march, and then you have this classic, dude. I'm like, and I was literally tearing up when I was watching this last night, and I've seen this movie dozens of times. It's not my first time. I knew exactly what was coming. And for some reason, when the music starts, they start walking down. I'm just like, I literally had, my eyes are watering. I'm not exaggerating.
Well, didn't you say did you and your wife walk down the aisle to that?
Yes, but
song?
I forgot that.
Yeah, that might be part of why it's so emotional for you.
And so, that would make sense. But I mean, again, it was, I think, the subconscious memory, the subconscious knew. The Mike watching the movie completely forgot that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't until later. My wife passed out from all this too, and but that makes sense why it hit me more. And I love this scene. I also love what Jackie was wearing. For some reason, I think he just looks awesome, and it's just such a good scene. Now I have a little bit of issues with it, which we'll get to once I finish. But it's just the way that they cheer when they get back, and the fact that even the deserter Han Solo gets a medal because he came back. Why should we just get a medal? I don't know, but
racism.
Yeah, just wait 40 years and they'll
The droids don't get medals either. I mean, all of this, none of this would have happened without R2, especially.
So they give to the 2 white men who are there. All typical.
But yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful scene. We can discuss the problem with it if you want. I can put on my history teacher hat again whenever you want.
1 second. And then the other thing about it, and then I'm starting to tear up. He gives them medals. They turn around. And then it goes from the throne room song to the ending song, the credits. I'm just like,
yeah, it's really well done. It's very well done.
But yeah, I completely forgot. My wife walked out to this song. Completely forgot.
That's awesome.
Until she said something to me.
You're like, oh yeah, that's why I was crying. That's why.
Yeah, and I want to think subconsciously. I mean, sure, subconsciously, but to be honest, I think it's just I have always loved this scene. Even before I got married, I loved this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And they clap, and most people are all, this all probably left the rebel army because everybody's been killed.
Yeah.
You don't need any dialogue. You don't need any more catch up. I think this is the perfect way to end it. Yeah.
It's just music and looks, and Leia gives kind of a very warm smile to each of them because we haven't set up the love triangle quite yet.
They started though. There's a small.
They've started.
There's a small line with Ford or Han Solo where he says, "Do you think a guy like me?" He's like, "No." Lucas,
because Luke's obviously got a crush on her.
So that was good.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
All right, and Kerry, do you want to say what's wrong with this scene that I did not know and wish I did not know?
So, 1936, the Olympics were held in Berlin in Nazi Germany. The Nazis hosted the Olympics, and they made a movie. They made a documentary. Hitler had a filmmaker, a woman named Leni Riefenstahl, and she made a documentary about the 1936 Berlin Olympics and about the Nazis in general. And it's a propaganda film that won the Best Foreign Picture Oscar in 1937. And so, and this scene is lifted directly, shot for shot, from a scene from that movie, Triumph of the Will. That's the name of the movie. So it is bizarre because elsewhere this movie has been the Empire are the Nazis, right? And then we have this scene where the rebels are the Nazis, and the Chewie and them walking down the aisle. They are walking where they walk. Where we have them. It's Chewie, Han, and Luke that walk down the aisle, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when they're walking down the aisle, the way it pans up and kind of the camera kind of is above them and kind of tilts up behind them, and as they're walking through these ranks of soldiers up to the dais. That is exactly shot for shot from Triumph of the Will of Hitler and 2 of his people walking down this line of German soldiers it's not the Olympics, it's a Nazi rally at Nuremberg, but they use that in Triumph of the Will. It's a shot they use in Triumph of the Will. And it's not on accident. It's not on accident. It's really weird. And there's a history of filmmakers doing this kind of thing. There's a movie, Birth of a Nation, which is a pro-KKK propaganda film, big time, from 1913. And that film, George Romero made Night of the Living Dead is in a lot of ways an homage to Birth of a Nation. The zombies in Night of the Living Dead are based on the blackface black soldiers that terrorize the South in Birth of a Nation. And this is I don't know. It's not okay. It's not that I say. It's not okay.
I guess the question.
Go ahead.
It's clearly it's clearly a reference to that, and I feel like it's another one though. It may be another one of those, as we were talking about, film nerd references that George Lucas was going for. I mean, the average person wouldn't have picked up on it, but I'm sure. I wonder what the thought process was. I don't know enough, but I'm sure it was kind of like George Lucas was we need a military celebration, and he undoubtedly had seen. The Millennium Riefenstahls. Yeah, and he was
when George Romero was in film schools were showing Birth of a Nation because it pioneered panning shots. Birth of a Nation is the first movie with panning, and it's the first movie with iris screen wipes and stuff. And so they would show Birth of a Nation in film schools back in the 50s and the 60s when George Romero was in film school. And similarly, I'm sure they watched Triumph of the Will in film school when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and them were there. And so, yeah, I'm sure it was just a film nerd thing that he was showing his friends, like, oh, look, I put Birth of a Nation in my movie. Not Birth of a Nation. I put Triumph for the Will in my movie. Isn't that funny? Isn't that neat?
Right.
But it's weird. It's a weird choice to make, especially
it is weird.
Where a movie where you've so clearly on the nose referenced the Nazis as being bad guys to then end the movie with the Nazis as the good guys. It's weird.
Right.
It is kind of strange.
It's an odd choice. It's fine. I personally think it's whatever, but it is funny. And it's something, of course, you don't know.
Problematic is yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, because I didn't even know about Triumph of the Will till I was in college, and I was studying the Nazi Olympics, and I went to the Holocaust Museum, one of the Holocaust museums, the one in Houston, and they had an exhibit on the Nazi Olympics, and they had film from Triumph of the Will, and I've seen that shot in that. They had like Triumph of the Will. They had like clips from Triumph of the Will playing on a screen while you're walking around looking at all this, exhibits and stuff, and it's like. So I've seen it. I mean, this is very much exactly what it is. Like, there's no mistaking it. It's clearly that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, knowing this fact now, but okay.
Yeah, it is. It's something.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I also feel like at the time, not people who weren't in film school wouldn't have known. Like, it's not hell. Even to this day, I this is the first time I ever heard it about that.
And to be clear, there's no way George Lucas is pro-Nazi. He is very clearly anti-Nazi. That is written through his films. It's in, Indiana Jones, the Nazis are the bad guys in 2 out of 3 films with that.
The 2 good ones, yes.
Yeah, the two good Indiana Jones movies. The
out of
Nazis
the 4,
out of
the
3 that exist, the 2 the Nazis are the bad guys. So no, I'm sure that George Lucas is definitely not pro-Nazi. It's just a weird decision.
Right. It is weird. It would not be made the same way today, probably.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that today, I don't think. No. If someone did that today, it would be someone who was actually pro-Nazi. Like an anti-Nazi filmmaker like George Lucas would not do that.
Right. Which unfortunately happens in this world today. But
yes.
Right. I will say one more thing because we're wrapping up. You mentioned the music, and I think this movie owes, more than half of its success, I'd say, to John Williams, whose music stupendous and magical. And, all you have to do is play the theme and people conjure up memories, play any track from any artist soundtrack and where it was. And, it just brings up all sorts of images. So John Williams is a genius. Everything he pretty much does is a genius. And George Lucas, I'm sure you said this, but George Lucas owes him a lot for that.
Definitely.
For the success.
I mean, I love the music in this, and anyone who listens to the show enough knows I'm not a big music guy, but it's the same thing. This music hits spots. Like that Throne Room made me freaking tear up.
Right.
Like it just
it is.
It's great music.
I think if you play a lot of Star Wars video games, you'll hear a lot of these tracks over and over again, and that probably has something to do with it as well. So
and
you don't get tired of them because they're so well done.
No.
Was the Imperial theme in this movie, or like very little? No, right?
It's not. Wasn't written until Empire.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is missing the scene that I thought was this movie, but isn't this movie where Vader's heading to the ship and all the stormtroopers stand there? But I think that's Return of the Jedi.
That's in Jedi, yeah.
Okay.
That's in Jedi.
And all I could ever think of is how people like to dub that scene with different music, like romantic music, and how much it changes the scene.
Very true.
I love that. It's like this is how you show music is different. Like it really affects the scene. You put like some romantic song and it just doesn't. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very true. That's so true.
I always laugh at that part whenever I see the meme come up with that where it has that music. I'm like, okay, that's all. We should go to shelf, stack, or box, and I'll go first. This is obviously going on the shelf. This is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. This isn't my favorite movie of all. It's up there with one of my favorite movies of all time. It's definitely my favorite Star Wars movie. I get a kick out of this movie all the time. I love how it's a standalone movie, even though it's the beginning of a complete series, but they didn't know that yet. And it's so good. And I love the fact that it wraps up, it ends on a happy note, and you don't have all your characters lose a hand, get vanished off the face of the earth. Everything just disappears and everybody's in turmoil. I like that there isn't that. So, going on the shelf, and I'm really glad that I got to finally watch it and cover it on the show. What about you, Peter?
Keep it on the shelf. For sure. Certainly one of the greatest movies of all time. And no matter where you think of the Star Wars trilogy, I personally love the dark and adult themes of Empire. However, this one is the probably most complete Star Wars movie. It's a story from beginning to end. If you never saw another Star Wars movie, you could just see this one and be fine. And that's why it's timeless, in my opinion. So definitely keep it on your shelf. Watch it.
And what about you, Kerry?
Yeah, exactly what Peter said. My favorite is Empire. This is my second favorite, and it's a close second. This is, and I think, like I was saying earlier, Empire is my favorite, but this is probably the best overall made movie in this series. It's a complete movie, and it does everything it needs to do. And yeah, like I would hope that you would see more than just this. But if you only saw one Star Wars movie, this is the one you have to see.
Yeah, definitely. And again, as I said at the top of the show, I want to thank Patreon for people voting for this, because I really wanted to rewatch this. And the next voting was Phantom Menace that people wanted us to cover. People didn't vote for Force Awakens.
That would have been fun in a different way.
We will do it. I want to cover Phantom Menace. I don't want to cover Attack of Clones, but we will. And I don't want to cover Revenge of the Sith, but we will.
I am very interested in talking about Phantom Menace with you, if only to see your defense, your extreme defense of the movie.
Yourself.
Yes.
I still like that movie a lot.
It's great.
And I watched it right before Rise of Skywalker came out, was the last time I saw it. Oh no, I put it on. No, I put it on since then. When I edit, is one of my movies I'll randomly throw on when I'm editing just to watch it.
Okay.
What I like to say is the Phantom Menace has a really good, solid, like 15 minutes of content in it that I will occasionally just watch scenes from Phantom Menace that I like. But
You mean the whole movie? Because the whole movie's good.
no, the movie itself is. I mean, what I'll say about this is it's better than Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, that's wrong.
This is why we need to do this. Well, we'll do this. Yeah.
It is.
I want to cover the 9 main movies, and so I want to cover all 11. And hell, I'm covering Star Wars Ewok. Was supposed to be recorded at the time you're hearing this a couple weeks ago, but it fell through. But I did watch Star Wars Caravan of Courage / Lord of the Rings, because that's what that movie is. And I'm going to cover it and rewatch it again because I hate myself. But
yeah.
I have to rewatch it because it's been too long now. Because my recording got canceled, and I got a fucking movie.
That's some masochism right there.
To watch that movie twice? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That movie, but it's really Lord of the Rings. If you watch it, which I don't recommend, but you can, it's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It really is. All right. And Peter, where can people find you at?
If you go to Amazon and look up The Fifth Civilization, that's my first sci-fi novel. It's part of a trilogy. And start with that one. And if you like it, please think about buying the other ones too.
All right. And where can the people find you, Kerry?
I'm on Twitch and occasionally TikTok at Kerooseta, Kerooseta. Playing a lot of Elden Ring on there lately, but then I also repair and modify video game consoles. I just recently fixed a Game Boy Color on Twitch. So
okay. And you can find all our episodes on Podbean if you're missing stuff that you can get, because we have covered lots of episodes. I should look up how many Star Wars stuff we did, but while I'm looking it up, as I said before, go support us on Patreon. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. We're only audio, but we are on YouTube. So definitely do that. Want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Hasfer. You can follow her on TikTok. And want to give a shout out to my buddy Bill Tucker, who did the MC with me when we covered the Infinity Saga. And I don't know if we'll ever pick that up again, because I don't think any of us want to, but I'm trying. I'm thinking about it, because I'm an idiot and want to cover more Marvel for some reason. And he started his own podcast, Gamer Looks to 40. Definitely go check him out. And if you want to hear more Star Wars, we have done Star Wars Dark Force Rising, Comic 36, Star Wars Book of Boba Fett, TV 4, Star Wars Heir to the Empire, Comic 34, Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 1, TV 2, Star Wars Dark Empire 2, Comic 30, Star Wars Dark Empire, Comic 27, Star Wars Force Unleashed, Episode 115, Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 2, TV 1, Star Wars Bounty Hunter, Episode 87, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Part 1 and 2, Episode 69, Star Wars Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, Comic 6, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, Episode 48, Star Wars Holiday Special, Film 6, Star Wars Republic Commando, Episode 21, and Star Wars Dark Forces, Episode 13. God, Star Wars is now going to be the top, because we already have 2 other ones. We have this coming out, and then we have The Last Command coming out shortly after this.
Wow.
So yeah, I've done a lot.
It's a lot of Star Wars.
And the funny part is I never covered the original movies until just now. I covered the first one after all this time.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, to be honest, but it's me. It doesn't always make sense when I do on this show. And I think that's everything I need to say. So yeah, just go follow us wherever you want to find us. We're everywhere. And we will see you next time with more Star Wars, because I'm gonna make Empire Strikes Back happen one way or the other on the show in a month or two. So one way or the other. So yes, we will see everybody next time. Bye, everybody.
May the Force be with you.